I wish I would have been alive.
I say this, I've been saying it for 50 years, one way or the other. So.
We still got the footage. So, folks, hey, live followers, live viewers, I'm going to be interviewing somebody on Dropping Bombs right now. This dude, believe it or not, has a hell of a story. You got to stick around and listen to the story. You might have even heard of the story. It's, a whole movie was based on it called Midnight Express. So his name's Billy Hayes. You find him at Real Billy Hayes on Instagram and Billy Hayes, just like it sounds, on Facebook. But stick around because there's going to be a freaking zinger. His story's amazing. And again, you're just watching us tape a live stream of the podcast. So this airs, a couple weeks from now, but you get to see it live because you're lucky and you tuned in. You ready?
Yeah.
And you want to get that mic as close? Yeah. And you can adjust it. So if it's ever in your way, you can move it.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, testing. Usually
Perfect.
Here, right?
Yep.
Right
Perfect. Here we go.
Listen up or run for cover. From the people who haven't to the people who need it. The real Brad Lea is dropping.
What it is, Brad Lea back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs. Today in the studio, folks, I has a treat for you, but today it's an extra special one. Billy Hayes is in the house. What's up, Billy?
We all are right now. It's a lovely day. The sun is shining and healthy. I'm healthy. I'm free. My wife still loves me, and nobody's beating my feet with a stick. Everything else is gravy. Sometimes it's hot gravy. Sometimes it's cold gravy, but it's all gravy for me.
It's funny because I preach a lot of that, positive mindset and gratitude and perspective and how big of a difference it makes in people's life. But before I get too far in, folks, Billy Hayes is an American writer, actor, and director, best known for his 1977 memoir, Midnight Express, which details basically your imprisonment in Turkey for drug smuggling, and then was adapted into the Academy Award-winning film. You later wrote more sequels, including Midnight Return and Letters from a Turkish Prison. And you've won or earned critical acclaim for staging Cock and Bull Story.
Yeah. It was an English play that I got to direct in L.A. 2-character play dealing with machismo, and it was in the boxing realm, and what qualifies you as being a man and what disqualifies you. Wonderfully written piece, and I got to direct it with 2 terrific actors in L.A., and it was a huge hit. It ran for a couple of weeks, sold out shows, and then the L.A. riots hit. And we had to close the show down and return the money for about 3 weeks worth of audience, which that hurt. I mean, as your director, this is my big show. This worked beautifully for me, and I love directing.
So you were on Locked Up Abroad, or basically you were featured as a story on Locked Up Abroad. If you guys have seen that, that's where people get nabbed in other countries and get their asses locked up, usually for ridiculous amounts of time because some of the other rules and consequences are a little stiff. How was Turkey's?
Well, I was originally sentenced to, I was arrested at the airport with 2 kilos, 4.4 pounds of prime Turkish hashish taped all over my 23-year-old body. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I actually smuggled hash successfully 3 times in October of 1969 and in April of 1970. October of 1970, of a 4th trip, I was busted at the airport. The PLO had just blown up some hijacked jets out in the Jordanian desert, and all of this airport security, that nothing happened. I mean, nobody got searched getting on an airplane back in 1969. You could have a chicken under your arm, nobody would bother you. But this ramped up the airport security worldwide, went on alert. And the worst place I could be, I strolled right into it. I was so confident. I was young. I was 23. I could get away with anything. After my first successful hash smuggling trip, I couldn't be touched. I was invincible. And I did it the second time. I did it the third time. I should have quit. and I was ahead, but I don't.
How much money did you get the first, second, and third time?
About $5,000 a trip, which doesn't seem like a lot of money for the risk that was being taken. But again, I was 23. I was free flowing. I just was invincible.
Were you a hippie?
Kind of. Too much long hair gets in your way when you're smuggling. So I wasn't really a hippie. I was too self-centered to be a hippie. But it forced prison was the worst and the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to grow up. I needed to take responsibility for my actions because actions have consequences. And I wasn't considering anybody except myself. And then suddenly, not only have I gotten myself busted and fucked up and locked in jail, but I put everybody who loves me in prison. My mom, oh, that's hard. 50 years later, I can barely talk about that. My mom went to sleep every night wondering where her kid is. It just, my father was this, I'm so lucky. I had such a good family. My dad is straight in all the good connotations of that word. He never lied. You always knew where you stood with him. He was a really smart guy. And he had me, I was reading. I can't remember a time where I couldn't read. I went into school. I could read before I went into my first grade class. I've always been a reader because my dad would bring me books and taught me how to read. And he would, when he'd come home, I'd have to learn like 5 new rivers or 5 new capitals of states or some kind of a little thing that day that I'd have to tell him when I come home. Now use these words in a sentence. So I had to do that. So my dad got me prepared for life in a lot of ways that paid off later. He trusted me to be smart enough to make the right decision. And usually I did. And when I didn't, I let him and my family and everybody down because, again, they suffered for 5 years.
Do you think looking back, there was something he didn't do that would have prevented you smuggling?
Probably not, because he gave me the freedom to be myself. And I was myself. Smuggling hash, again, I smoked cannabis. I used to drink a couple of beers at college. I went to Marquette University, journalism school. So I'd have 2 beers or some wine and get drunk and stupid and even more obnoxious than you are when you're 19 years old. But I get a terrible hangover. So the first time I smoked a joint, literally, it was like, that's what we like. My body knew, literally, my body knew this is good for me. Alcohol, I hated it, and my body hated it. So I never drank. I don't drink any. I smoke cannabis virtually every day for the last 50 years, and I'm the healthiest guy I know. The fact that I've also done yoga every day for 50 years, that helps. That factored into it. In fact, I was just discovering yoga in 1969. I had Light on Yoga, which is the classic book that B.K.S. Iyengar brought from India when he brought yoga to the West. And I had that book. I was putting it in my backpack while I was standing at the airport in Istanbul being arrested. So yoga was literally right on my back when I get in, and it truly saved me inside. I was young. I was healthy. I'd always been an athlete, and I did martial arts and all that stuff. That wasn't the hard part for me. Prison was, the hard part was like the fact that my family suffered, that I didn't know what's going to happen next. I felt like I was in control of my life until suddenly, not only was I not in control of my life, I didn't even have control of where I slept or when I ate or what I did. I couldn't walk more than 32 steps in one direction without hitting a stone wall.
Well, what were you doing there in the first place?
I was smuggling hash. I had a friend of mine.
So you went there to do that?
Yeah, I did. I had a friend of mine whose dad was a wine distributor around the world. So he traveled a lot. He came back from Istanbul somewhere in 1969, and hidden in his money belt, he had this little hunk of hash, best hash we had ever smoked. He said, it's cheap. It's easy. They sell it right on the street. It's like, really? At the time I was working, I was, again, Marquette University. I was finishing up my 4th year journalism school, and I was working part-time in the one of the local hospitals, child psychiatric aide. Strangely enough, I got a job. I have no qualifications for it at all, but I met a woman in the bar, older woman, mid-30s or so. I'm in my 20s now. And somehow I found out that she was the head nurse at the hospital, Milwaukee General, and it was summer coming up. And I said, I need a job. Can I get a job? She said, what are you, you're not qualified for any of this? I said, I know. She said, why do you think you can work here with these disturbed kids? I don't know. I'm good with kids. She said, really? I showed up at the hospital the next day. I got a little badge saying I'm a temporary psychiatric aide, and I worked with these very disturbed autistic kids on a locked ward. I mean, it was a precursor of what was coming from me, because literally when you go on that lock, they lock you in that ward so that the kids can't get away. And I just talked to the kids. That was my job. And it went very well, except emotionally, it was so, I wanted to heal these kids, but that's not going to happen. You know, you don't do that. So each time I would get a little break from the hospital, I would get out of the locked ward, and I was walking around the hospital. I went past what turned out to be the cast room, and I saw a doctor dipping a roll of plaster of Paris tape into water and wrapping it around this patient's broken leg. And an idea came to me that changed my life. 2 weeks later, I was in Istanbul. I had 4 pounds, 2.2 kilos of hash taped around my leg, and I was dipping the roll of plaster of Paris tape in the water and wrapping it around the hash and watching as this rough, bulky, but beautiful white cast took shape. Spend an interesting night smoking hash, watching the cast dry, and next day I'm clomping across the Istanbul airport up to the customs guy, who glances at my passport, looks down at my leg, asked me where I broke my leg. I told, hiking down in those wonderful ruins down south in Izmir. And then the customs guy asked me for the doctor's note. The doctor's note. Oh, fuck. I don't have a dice. He said, you know, I must have lost it down at Izmir. Do I have to go all the way back down there to get another note? And he looks at me, and he looks at the long line. He looks back at me, stamps my passport, waved me through. I got on the plane, and a sympathetic stewardess reseated me so I could stretch out my injured leg, which is full of hash. I got to New York Customs. I was clomping across New York Customs, heading towards the U.S. Customs deck, and I noticed a little trail of white flakes. My cast was crumbling beneath me as I was approaching the customs deck. But they just snapped my passport, waved me through. Yay, I made it. Not quite the flawless planning I'd hoped for, but now I'm back, and I'm selling hash to all my friends and making a chunk of money, getting laid a lot. You talk about the summer of love, and just free rolling. And 6 months later, I was running out of money. So I went back for a second trip. And then I went back for a third trip. I loved Istanbul, by the way. It was a fascinating city.
I heard it's beautiful there.
It's so wonderful. And it's changed a lot. This is 50 years ago, but it's still changed a lot. But when the movie came out, Oliver Stone wrote the screenplay. He's a brilliant writer. He does wonderful work. I have some problems with him, but that's another issue. The film cast Turkey in such a bad light, made them look terrible. And it wasn't true to my story. Again, I loved Istanbul. I had a Turkish girlfriend. I loved it in Istanbul. But it made Turkey look so bad. Literally, their tourism dropped 95% when Midnight Express, the movie, came out. It was an international horror show for them. And they protested it, which is the dumbest thing to do, because that got everybody up. New York, they had Turkish people out in the street protesting this film. People on the sidewalk saying, what film? It just blew it up for them. Peter Guber, the producer, said the same thing. He said, we didn't have to spend any money on producing this, because as soon as the Turks saw the movie and heard what Oliver wrote and what happened, they went berserk, and the publicity went out of the store. I ended up literally traveling the world for about 6 weeks, I believe, doing interviews. When I say I've done 1,000, I stopped counting at 1,000. I used to do 5, 6, 7 days a week. Columbia sent me all around the world to promote the film wherever it was. So
let's go back before the film,
okay?
Because you had to have shit happen first. So I'm picturing this. I like the storytelling because you're a good storyteller. So I'm picturing you, 23 years old. You're helping out at some psychiatric ward type of thing, right? And you get an idea. You see the cash. You're like, dude, I could freaking bring hash back. Why not weed from the west side of town? Like, why Turkey? Because it was cheap?
And because it was so much. 1969, this was. The weed here, most of it was ditch weed. Most of it was not good. Even the good weed here paled in comparison to the shit I got in Turkey. First,
you should have went to Oregon.
Oh, no. Turkey has the best, particularly because back then they have the Kurds, which is a group of Turks, but they don't consider themselves Turks. They live in the mountains in eastern Turkey. Well, the guy that I hooked up with, he was a Kurd. I got my hash from him, and he said, this is the best hash. This is not Turkish hash. I'm not a Turk. He is a Turk. He lives in Turkey, but he's a Kurd. And they take great pride in the fact that their hash was the best. And it was. The hash that I brought back, people in Milwaukee, because I took it to college, Marquette University, where I was going to school. I brought it there. People couldn't believe this hash. People said, well, how do you know how to sell it? You don't have to do anything. You just sit there. People come to you. People heard that Crazy, that was my nickname back then. Crazy's back. Crazy's got hash. People would line up. I'm a chess player. I had a chess set, which when you open it, there's like little things and you can put little racks out where the pieces are. And I put that out and I had little pieces of hash cut to little gram sizes taped underneath the bottom of my chess set. So I would go into the park and sit there and play chess with people and sell them little chunks of hash. It just sold itself. It was amazing. And it was so easy. I kept my hash and my cash in a safety deposit box at the bank. I didn't know how to write a check.
Is this like blonde Lebanese or something?
This was a kind of dark, very gummy Turkish, but again, Kurdish Turkish hash, which was kind of gummy and sticky. And
why was theirs so much better than anybody else's?
Because they prided themselves on this. And again, they're a separate ethnic group within Turkey, and there's been a lot of friction back and forth. You know,
it's like getting jambalaya from someone down in Louisiana.
The real
a little bit different.
Yeah, a little bit different than the real stuff. And they prided themselves. And again, it grew up in the mountains. It was a better growing area, and they have been growing this for many, many years. They've got it down. So when I brought that hash back, it
was lights out,
knocked everybody out.
And you became the hash guy now.
I was.
So you came through first with the cast. What about the second time? Again?
I decided against the cast. Let's see. It was October was the first one. So October of 1969, and no, it was April of 1969, and then October of 1969, and then April of 1970. Unfortunately, October of 1970. Well, October of 1969, my second trip, I went back, but I decided against the cast. Seeing as how I almost got busted the first time when the guy wanted my doctor's note, which I didn't have, and the cast was crumbling under me. I thought I was so clever and so smart, and I was so dumb. I mean, really, one of the first things my dad, when he visited me in the prison, said, he just looked at me like, the fuck are you doing? And I didn't know. I couldn't answer it because I really didn't know what I was doing.
But you've never been to prison here in America.
No. We got locked up one night in like Skokie, Illinois or somewhere when I was driving back from Marquette, driving to Florida, in fact, for some spring break or something. And somehow or other, we ended up 4 or 5 of us in some bar. And one thing led to another. And then there was carousing. And next thing I know, 4 or 5 of us are locked up in the local Skokie jail for the night.
For fights?
Yeah.
Not for drug smuggling?
No, not for drugs.
So the second time, how'd you get through?
I taped it to my skin. I taped a whole bunch of plaque. This is a thin, long, perfectly plaqued. My guy pressed the hash powder to the sizes that I wanted, which is long, thin hawks. I'm real skinny, so I could put all of these hash things, tape them on, tap them around my waist, and tape them into my boots. So I put it all around my body, and I jumped on the fabled Orient Express train, chugging out of Istanbul, heading towards Paris. The third time I came back, I was so confident. The third time I just said, fuck it. I taped it under my arms, pull on my sweater, pull on my jacket, put on my smile, and walk straight onto the plane. That's how confident I was.
Okay. Yeah, still, it worked the first 3 times.
Yes.
So I can see how you start to get like, this is easy.
And I was 23 again. It was like,
plus you were getting laid a lot, you were making a bunch of money, and it's also fun when you're young to travel.
And it was exciting. And again, I'm a writer. I'm taking notes. I got all my notes. I'm constantly taking notes of all of this stuff. Yeah. So I got my book published. It's not the way I planned to get it, but it's what happened. So that's a good thing out of it.
You weren't planning on writing this as you were doing it, were you?
I was taking notes while I was doing it.
Do you think, because you were in journalism, like, hey, maybe I'll write about this?
Yes, exactly.
Were you like vlogging before vlogging was a thing?
Yes, exactly. I've got notes I'm always taking notes, especially back then. I'm older now, but back then, constantly. Because I'm going to write the great American novel. I want to write a book that's going to just knock it all out. I did, but it wasn't quite the way I expected it to be. And of course, as I said, I was just thinking about me.
So now let's talk about the time you went through and you didn't get away.
Fourth trip, again, the PLO had just blown up these jets out in the Jordanian desert. The day before I'm scheduled to fly, I went out to the airport to watch and see what was going on. And those days, not anymore, but you used to be able to watch people, going through customs or up at the observation deck, watching people go out to the plane. My plan was to go out there, hat pulled low, dark shades on, cool, casual, watching people going through customs. There's no metal detectors. Nobody's getting body searched out here at the airport. Like, no problem. I think a piece of cake. And then they take us to a little downstairs room for a while, which is a little odd, but again, no problem. James Bond is through customs. I'm feeling fine. They put us on a couple of buses, old beat up buses, to take us out to the plane, which I thought that's a little weird, but again, no problem. And the kindly old lady from Chicago talking to me about her grandson who's here in the Air Force and how much she likes it in Istanbul. And the bus stops and a Turkish cop steps on, stares down the aisle and says, "Women stay, men out, out." And I look out the window. There are Turkish soldiers surrounding the plane with rifles and yellow tape. And they've got a long brown table set up in front of the boarding ramp with 2 cops on each side, where apparently they're going to search people right here at the plane.
Random?
Everybody.
Yeah, but it's just a random search.
Yeah. But I mean, nobody's getting on that plane till they're searched.
Nobody got tipped off, though.
No, people weren't concerned about hash smugglers. They're looking for terrorists. Again, they just blew up planes out in the Jordanian, the PLO, I guess it was back then, blew up the planes in the Jordanian desert. So they're freaked out by this. And in I stroll with this hash taped under my arm. So we got off the bus. All these men were sauntering down around the other buses and squeezing down, heading towards the table. And there's nowhere to go. I can't get back to the airport.
Are you shitting your pants?
I can't rip it. If I had any in me, it would have been. I got this tape under my arm. I can't rip it off. I can't get back to the airport. All I can do is bluff my way onto the plane, which is what I tried to do. So I kind of like got all these men, again, middling around and funneling down towards this table. So I kind of like moved through this jumble of men, and I slid past the first cop, and I was putting my yoga book back into my shoulder pack as if I've already been searched. And I point to the cop there. I said, "The other guy got me." And I got 1 foot up in the air towards the boarding ramp, when this hand grabs my elbow. The moments when you know fate is hanging in the balance, I knew right then when my elbow got grabbed, it was like, oh man. And this guy, the other cop down here, just happened to finish with another passenger and caught my cop's eye. And my cop nodded at me like, "Did you search this one?" And the guy looks at me and he shakes his head no. And the grip on my elbow tightens as this nervous young cop out here looking for terrorists. They're not looking for hash smugglers. He realizes I've just lied to him. So he pulls me aside and he gestures, "Lift your arms," which I do. And he starts to search me. And he hits the hard plaques under my arms. And he keeps going. And he hits the hard plaques taped to my stomach. And he keeps going down my legs. I find myself praying, "Please, Jesus, get me out of here. I will never do this shit again." But, this is a Muslim country. I'm praying to the wrong God. And this time when the cop comes up, he hits the hard plaques under my arms. And he freezes, and his eyes widen, and my heart stops. And he jumps back, pulls out his gun, drops to one knee, screaming, "Bomba! Bomba!" And all the soldiers swing their rifles down. People are screaming and collapsing on the ground. I'm frozen there, not breathing, waiting.
They think it's explosives?
Yes, that's what they're looking for, waiting to be shot. I thought I was going to get shot right there. This shaking gun presses into my stomach, and this now terrified young cop lifts up my sweater, and it takes him a moment to realize it's not a mad bomber wired with explosive, just some idiot out here smuggling hash. I can see the tension go out of his face. It's like, "Hashish, hashish," he calls out to everybody, and he pulls the gun from my stomach, so relieved. And all the soldiers put their rifles down, so relieved. And everybody so relieved, except me, because that was the beginning of 5 very long years. They dragged
straight to the can?
No, they dragged me into a smoky, crowded room at the airport where crowded with soldiers and cops, and they yanked the hash off from under my arm. They yanked the hash from my arm. They pile it up on a little table up front where 3 cops are sitting, and the top cop with the star on his shoulder says, "Name?" It's like, "William Hayes." "William Hayes," he said, and then the door opens, and another cop, 2 stars, comes in. "Name?" "William Hayes." "William Hayes." This happens a couple of more times. More cops with more stars come in to share the prize. They bring in the photographer with an old tripod camera, and they pile a hash up in my arms. And these cops are lining up on both sides of me like big game hunters, fixing their tie, slicking down their hair, tweaking their caps. It's so surreal. I just have to smile. Which brings the photographer out from under his hood to say something to the cop on my right, who casually backhands me to the nuts. And I collapse on the ground and drop the hash. And then they drag me back up and they make me pull up the hash. And now the photographer takes his picture, because that's how I look in the photo. It's like, oh, because I just have my nuts smashed by this guy. And they kept me out there a little while. And the rest of it is the next day, I spent the night in the local lockup there in Istanbul, which now it's getting serious.
Yeah, but how is it? Are there dangerous, badass freaking killers around you? Is it like a Turkish prison would sound, or is it just, you're in prison in Turkey?
All of that. And yes, there are dangerous killers there. There are also idiots like me. There are people in between. But it's strange because prison, the social structure is upside down. The worst, nastiest killers and shit on the outside are the bottom of the social structure. And the prison, it turns over. Those guys are up on top. The worst people are the, what do they call them? The yum-yums, the foreigners who smuggle in hash. These guys, are the killers, they get respect in jail. The baddest guys are at the top of the social structure. I'm just one of the yum-yums on the bottom who got busted for hash.
And you're from America, so like this is 10 times scarier.
It was scary in the fact that
What do you call?
I didn't know what to do. Well, that's another thing too.
Like here, I get my rights, and you might know your rights. Well, dude, you're in Turkey, bro. There's no rights, and whatever they are, you're not even aware. Did you speak Turkish?
Not then. A little bit, because again, I was there 1, 2, 3 times before getting busted the 4th time. So I learned a little bit of Turkish back and forth. After I was in prison for a while, I learned to speak Turkish, but that didn't help right away.
So they snatched you and they threw you in jail, and then did you have to go to court?
I went to court 14 times before I received my first sentence.
I mean, was it civil? Like, did they get you a lawyer, or were you like calling America by now?
Someone came out the second morning I was there. Someone from the American Council came out, a Turk who spoke terrific English, and he was representing the council. And he talked to me, asked me how I'm doing. He said, asked me if I'm okay. Meaning, how bad was it last night when you were alone in that prison with all those guys? It was okay. I can deal with it. Again, I was young. I was healthy. I was an athlete. I was a martial artist. That shit didn't scare me.
Anyone mess with you?
One person did try to. My first night in jail, I got locked into a little cell, and this kind of sleazy guy who he was a prisoner, but he worked for the guards, and he was just a sleazy fucker, and he tried to run things. He put me in this bare, empty cell with no blanket, a little skinny mattress on a wood plank bed. And, I said, blanket, it was cold. He said, yeah, tomorrow. He says he's fumbling around this big jangly key ring, trying to find the right key for my cell. Again, this is 1970. There's no electronics. There's no email. There's nothing. This is way back then. And I see him trying to find the right key, and I realize I think he just gave up. My cell's not really locked. I hear him jangling. From the next cell, I open my door, and the next cell is this big guy, Popeye, a German guy who I actually met upstairs before this happened. And he says, last cell, blankets. And he gives me a stick with a big nail on the end of it. He tells me blankets down the last cell. So I creep down to the last cell, and I hook a blanket. I hook another blanket. I come back. I give him a blanket. I give him back a stick. Close my door. Curl up on the skimpy little mattress with the blanket and just collapse, because I've been awake for like 2 days, to just collapse into sleep. And then the door slams open, and this Amin guy comes screaming into my cell. He's yelling and screaming. He's grabbing my blanket. Again, I'm not real big, but I used to be really fast back then and nasty if I have to be. And I am scared shitless, and I nail him in the face. Bah! And he goes down, and his nose is bleeding, and he's screaming for the guards. They're rushing in. They're dragging me out. I'm trying to explain in English, which they don't speak. He woke me up. He hit me first. All they know is new guy, first night in a fight. Lesson needs to be taught. And the lesson, they have a form of punishment in Turkey, well, most of the Middle East called falaka, where they wrap up your legs and they pull you up in the air and they beat your stick. They beat your feet with this wooden stick. And it hurts like a motherfucker. Whack. And I'm screaming and yelling. They're hitting my hands, and I think they're killing me. Turns out it's not a bad beating. Nothing broken. If nothing's broken, it's not a bad beating. Whoa, what am I doing? I was, I had bruises on my hands and my feet, but the good thing about all this is that when I got back to the cell block, word goes around. It's like a telephone in the prison that Ziad, Amy, I changed names, but the Ziad guy who was the badass, he worked for the guards. He dealt hash in jail. He was just a nasty motherfucker. And because he walked around the prison with a big black eye and a swollen face, that was good for me. Everybody in the prison said, what happened to Ziad? And they said, Willie, which was my name. Willie got in a fight. They said, really? And then they see me. I weigh 150 pounds. They see me. And it's like, really? But if they're looking for somebody to fuck with, they're going to pick somebody else. Because I've got a little bit of a rep now. Because, Ziad's face was smashed. I hit him really hard in the nose. It bled. And face was swollen up. That gave me a little edge in prison, that people are not going to mess with me as easily if that had not happened. So it held me in good stead for some reason.
Approximately how many inmates?
In this prison, there were about 2,000. My cell block had 80, 90, 100 in our cell block. It was a foreigner. They kept the foreigners separate from most of the Turks.
Cement and iron, or
stone and steel and bars.
No dirt?
There was a courtyard in the middle of the prison's like a big 3 long legs, a multi-tiered cell blocks running down the length, little rectangular courtyards in between the legs. And at first, when I first got there was a sort of a dirt, a center of in the courtyard. And it was dirt out there. So, which was kind of nice because when it rained, like weeds would grow in the cracks along the edges. And it was so nice to see like weeds, like real life in this cold steel stone world. But at one point, the guards found a bunch of weapons, including a scimitar, qigong, buried in one of the courtyards. So they cemented over all the dirt, which is too bad because I love the dirt. Everything else is stone and steel. And after a while, it just grates on you to be around stone. Nothing soft, nothing.
So you weren't getting punked. And you weren't getting beat up all the time. So you were just living in prison, which is hell by itself. But how was that? You didn't get moved around. You spent 5 years there. The next 5 years, you just got along.
I spent the first year in an individual cell, about 12 feet long, a little hole in the floor in the back for your toilet. You always have to keep a heavy can or a brick over it to keep the rats from scurrying up at night. They do anyway. It's a little bit wider than my stretched out arms, a little metal frame bed, wood planks, a little wooden table that hooked in the wall, a little wooden seat that hooked in the wall, a locker here behind me up against the bars. That was the cell we were in, which, I was there in that cell for about a year, and I just hated it. I hate being locked in this little cage at night. They open the door in the morning, you can go out, you can walk around the courtyard or where the rest of the little prison part there. But at night, they lock you down, and that was just, wow, that fucked me up. That took me a lot of time to just get over being locked in. That's why when the pandemic came, people said, oh, that must have been hard for you, being locked down like that. It's like, no, lockdown is different than locked up. Lockdown, you can go out and go to the grocery store. You want locked down. Locked up is you couldn't go out of your cage at night.
They shouldn't call it locked up abroad. They should call it locked down abroad.
So it was the first year, but then about the start of the second year, they suddenly move up to us. I didn't appreciate the cell until I lost, like everything in my life. I took everything for granted until I lost it, and I lost that cell, and they moved us all to a big, but they had 72 beds upstairs and 3 holes in the floor at the far end. That's our toilet. But there are always more guys than that. So people are always sleeping on the floors or under the bunks or on the tables in the downstairs dining hall. And that was probably the hardest thing for me to deal with is you're always lonely and you're never alone. There's always fucking people watching.
What about I'm thinking when did the gavel hit? Did you shit when they said 5 years? What'd they give you?
Originally, they gave me 4 years and 2 months, which it took me 14.
Well, again, you're technically lucky.
Well, for a
4 years for drug smuggling.
while,
If it was Singapore, wouldn't you have been dead?
I would have been technically lucky, but I got that, and I still had about 2 more years left of prison, which felt like forever. Again, I'm 22, 23, it's like forever.
Life's over.
And I tried a couple of escape attempts, which none of them really worked. I got myself sent to. I learned there's a clause in the Turkish law that says if you're judged to be crazy, they can't keep you in prison. If you're that crazy, they don't put you out on the street. If you're that crazy, and they don't put you on the street, they send you to Bakırköy. I discovered in the Turkish law, there's a clause that says if you're judged to be crazy, they can't keep you in jail. So I got sent. I bribed the prison doctor. Everything is bakshish. Every single thing is bakshish. You have to pay for everything. And I paid the prison doctor and I bribed him. And when the American consul would come out, they bring Marlboros, and they're forbidden in Turkey, Marlboros, but the American consul could get them. And so they bring them to me, and I would give them to the head guard. And I'm giving them to the head guard each 2 weeks, whatever the consul come out, I would be bribing the head guard. So he's my friend now. So if something happens in the cell block and there's a chunk of hash between you and me, and I'm giving them cigarettes and you're not, guess whose hash it is? It's yours. So you have to play those games constantly. So I did that for a while, and I was counting the days, and I went to this madhouse, which is a whole long story, and spent a couple of weeks there. Well, I've been a lot of places in my life. Nothing compared to that. Again, perspective. That made prison seem like when I left that place and finally came back from there to the prison I was in, I got into the cell block. I told the guys, "Oh, it's so good to be back here." And all my friends are like, "The fuck are you talking about?" They hadn't been to Bakırköy. They hadn't seen what it's like there. But what I discovered there, this was it used to be the whole big hospital. And one of the sections of the hospital, it used to be a barracks for the Sultan's Janissary troops back during the Ottoman Empire. That's how old this thing was. But the walls were all crumbling and falling down. And I knew if I can get back there, which I could with the bribe from my buddy now, the prison doctor, if he can get me back to Bakırköy, I need somebody on the outside, somebody I can trust with a car and clothes and money and the balls to do this. And I could climb that old broken down prison wall. I could climb like a squirrel. So I contacted my best friend, who he was working the fishing boats off Alaska at the time. And he agreed to drop everything and come help me escape. And he got to Mannheim, Germany, where he'd gotten a good job in the John Deere tractor factory, making the money we'll need and organizing for the big escape attempt. He's got to buy a false passport. We got to get a car, blah, blah, blah. And
that's a good buddy.
Yes, he came to the prison and we talked, and he went back to Germany getting ready, and he wrote me this letter telling me where he's making progress with the plans, and he mentions how he's boffing the wife of this American sergeant from the nearby. This is a guy who women wouldn't leave him alone. He was one of those guys women just wanted to take care of him, and he used that to his advantage. He had women everywhere. Well, he found a wife of an army sergeant and was messing with her. I spent a couple of weeks after he arrived, and he sent the letter and mentioned what he's doing, and I'm waiting, and I'm getting ready to bribe the prison doctor and make my way back to Bakırköy, coordinating with my friend Norman, when a telegram came from my dad saying that Norman was found dead in his hotel room in Mannheim, Germany, with a big army bayonet through his chest, which
From the husband?
I think so. The German police said it was suicide. Suicide. He's got a big army bayonet through his chest, but they just wanted to be done with it because he's an American. They didn't want to have problems. But I know it wasn't suicide. I know him. I know it wasn't suicide. He was ready to come and get me out. That's what he was looking forward to. This is like Count of Monte Cristo for him. He was on a mission. I couldn't have found a truer friend. But at that point, I realized not only have I fucked up my own life, and I'm causing daily pain to the people who love me, my mom and my dad and people. And now because he was coming to help me escape, my best friend is dead. And that pretty much spun me out. I didn't write home for months. I I would walk around the courtyard by myself, not talking to people, just, my heart's hollowed out, my brain's scraping against the wall. I stopped eating. People avoided me. People didn't want to come around me because I was going to do something. I didn't know what it was. But after a while, I realized maybe I need to grow up a little bit. Maybe I need to make another decision here. Maybe I need to just accept what I've done and accept my karma and do my time and finish my sentence. And so I turned the escape switch off. That one action changed everything. Prison literally became a different place. I was seeing it with new eyes. I got back into my yoga, which, I do every day. I stopped doing the yoga when my sentence got changed. I fucked the yoga, fucked everything. But I started doing the yoga again. I was talking to a little Japanese guy, the calmest guy in jail. And he's trying to teach me about living in the moment. And he's saying, just take care each little minute. Each little minute. And apparently the hours and the days and the years take care of themselves. And I'm remembering college philosophy, William James, the father of pragmatism, who said, people can alter their lives by altering their attitudes. It's like, what? People can alter their lives by altering. So I did. I altered my attitude. And suddenly, it's so bizarre. Suddenly, prison became a different place. I was locked into enjoying the moment and just appreciating being alive. And I'll do my time. And it changed everything for me. And I was calm again. I could do my yoga. I could walk the yard when I had to. I wasn't eating myself up. And the days were clicking away. And 56 days prior to going free, I had a calendar. And I've been crossing out years. Now I'm crossing out days. 54 days prior to going free, the American consul shows up for an unexpected visit. And I think, yay, the Turks are letting me out early. And as soon as I saw his face, I knew it's something bad. I'm worried about people at home. Somebody hurt, somebody sick, my family, not me. I'm going free in 54 days. I'm out of here in my mind already. And the council told me that the High Court in Ankara, responding to Nixon, who's pressuring Turkey and all the foreign countries to increase their penalties on starting the war on drugs, and they use me and a couple of other people as examples of Turkey enforcing their drug laws. And I had to go back to court and got resentenced to life in prison. So now I've gone from being free and being free in my mind and counting off the days and feel it's easy to be light and airy when things are going well. It's when things don't go well that those costly lessons about what you've learned about yourself and in hard times. And I just had to pull it together and realize I'm going to die here in prison if I don't do something. Everybody's tried something. I got lawyers trying things. Everybody was trying to get me out. Norman died trying to get me out. So I just said, fuck it. And I made some plans, and the plans included getting transferred to an island prison about 26 kilometers off the coast in the Sea of Marmara. And I used to be a swimmer. I was an ocean lifeguard and a surfer and such. That prison, it was called a half-open jail where we were locked up at night and there's guards with guns, but during the day we got to roam around the island that was on because we carried, there was a prison island. The boats would come from the mainland, drop off their produce, which they have amazing fruits and vegetables and they drop off their produce. We would unload those. They had a canning factory on the island that cheap labor that we worked in the canning factory. Then we'd make the can, unload stuff. So the boats would come, we'd unload the fresh fruit, we'd load on the canned fruit, and they would take off because they're not allowed to spend the night on the prison island. Except one day at lunch, I'm up a hill above the village, and I'm sitting on the grave of former President Menderes, who had been deposed by the army back in 1960, tried, hung, and buried right here on this island. So I'm sitting on Menderes's grave, and I'm looking down at the harbor, and we can see the approaching storm is whipping up the sea so bad that the early boats, they're all locking down, they're anchoring for the night. And each boat has a little wooden dinghy tied behind. That's what I did. I mean, swimming 26 kilometers would be a really long ways, especially after 5 years in jail. But the little dinghies, I knew that's my way out. So I had to wait for the next storm.
And you were in for life now.
Yeah. Actually, I was sentenced to muhabbet by the High Court in Ankara. The same judge in Istanbul who had originally sentenced me to 4 years and 2 months showed me, he said, this is what he said in court. He said, I wish I had retired before being forced to issue this verdict. He said, my hands are tied. He held his hands up like this. Kelepchi, he said, my hands are tied. He was forced by the High Court in Ankara to issue the life sentence. The only prerogative he had was he could lower that to 30 years, which he did. Thanks.
Still life.
Thanks, I guess. Yes, it was still life. But he sentenced me. The soldiers came and they wrapped the chains around my wrist, and then the soldiers and the American consul and my lawyers, they all have their eyes lowered. They're wishing me Getch Michelson, which is what you say to somebody who has something terrible happen to them. May it pass quickly. Getch Michelson, Getch Michels, Getchers, may it pass quickly. May it pass quickly. May it pass quickly. I'm looking at the fucking rest of my life in jail. May it pass quickly. The escape switch slammed on. And I was so focused on getting out. And it took me about 3, 4, 5 months after bribing the prison doctor, big bakshish, to get sent to this island prison. And the doctor, after I bribed him, almost $2,000, which was a huge amount of money, especially Turkey back then. And he recommended to the courts that I be transferred to the island prison, half open. Most of the guys in this half open prison have a smaller sentence, which is why they could go to a half open prison, because they didn't expect them to escape or anything else. I got transferred there because of my mental state. I needed to, and the doctor was working on this with me. So he got me transferred to the island prison. And I knew if I can get off this island, I knew that I've got maps. I know everything. When you're in jail, I had maps. I knew where the Greek border was. I knew what happened when. You plan and all this. Got nothing else to do in jail. You plan out escapes. And I just knew that if I could get off this island, I could get somewhere, which would be escape. I could make it. So in the storm at night, I got past the night bed check, long story, but it was, again, working with some of the big Kapadai guys. Like they're called the gangster prisoners. They really run prison. The guys, the big time guys, they're in here because somebody did something against them. And the cop that they bribed now busts you, and eventually you'll bribe some cop and you'll get out, but they're in prison with us. But they have people shining their shoes. I mean, they have people cooking for them, because there's poor guys in jail and there's the rich guys, just like the outside world. And these guys, they at night, when the bed check comes at night, they lock you in. You roam the island during the day, carrying shit back and forth, but at night you get locked in. And I had arranged with the head Kapadai. I speak good Turkish by now. I'm a curiosity piece. I'm the only foreigner on the island. I've arranged with the head Kapadai for permission to be in the accounting shed at night. 2 nerdy guys with adding machines towed up the day's canning profits, while a bunch of gangster prisoners, the Kapadais, they party here. They're slapping down dominoes. They're knocking back shots of Rocky. They're smoking joints. I needed to be there because that's past the bed check. I knew if I could get there, it'll be morning before anybody really knows I'm gone. With the next bed check would be in the morning. And so I talked to this guy, and I arranged to be able to go over here. And this night with the rain and stuff, I hung out a little while, and I tell the guys, I'm not feeling so good. Have some Rocky. No, thanks. Have some hash. No, thanks. I just need to go back to the barracks and rest. And instead, I make my way down the cobblestone road to the harbor, and underneath this wooden overhang, I climb up to the lip of the big empty concrete vat used to hold tomato paste. They'd squeeze hundreds of tomatoes. This is empty now. And I hid in the bottom of this vat, waiting, listening, wanted to be sure no other prisoners around, thrilled to be this close to escaping, and scared shitless, because there's no turning back now. And I lifted one leg up into the vat, and I heard a noise. I clattered down there, and I heard this clattering on the stones along the beach. A Turkish border guard patrolling along the beach here clatters by. He walks in under the overpass. I can hear him. He's standing on the other side of this little concrete wall. I see the flare of a match. I can smell the smoke. He's smoking a cigarette right here. I'm thinking, stone, inanimate object, no human vibrations. And when he finally clattered on down the beach, again, I made my way to the top and down. I crawled on the mud and the gook down towards the water, and I slid right in. I'm worried about guards in the, fishermen and the boats that are anchored here, and they have guards out on the end of the pier with machine guns. I mean, it's raining and shit. These guys aren't looking for anybody. Nobody escapes from this prison. This is half open. I mean, compared to the lockup jail, it was a wonderful place to be. But not for somebody who's got the rest of his life in prison. These guys are looking at, a couple of months, or maybe they got a year left, and they're not going to cause trouble. So they weren't expecting me to cause trouble, because I told everybody there, I'm an American, I have a life sentence. Or, oh no, how could you get that? Because I was one of the first people to get a life sentence with the change of Nixon and then the war on drugs. And I told them, I'm only here for a short time. The American consul is going to take me and bring me home, which sounded very logical. And most of them thought, why doesn't the American consul get you out of here? Because the American consul doesn't give a shit about me. If I was a senator's son, or there was some change involved in these, but they don't care about me. I'm just a drug smuggler. But it made it work, because people thought, well, he's not going to escape, which is what I wanted them to be thinking. So I was able to get to there. I was able to swim out to one of the boats, past the boats, pull into the bottom of one little dinghy, and I'm catching my breath, and the dinghy's pulling against its tether rope. And I knew from my map I needed to go straight across and hit the shoreline of Asia Minor from this island, or else I'll be swept far south out to sea down to the Dardanelles. So I got past the guards and past the night check, and I got the dinghy, and I rode the dinghy all night heading towards the shore. The prison itself is on a little horseshoe-shaped island, and the prison's here. So I was using the lights of the prison, because if I drifted too far south, and the current was pushing me that way, which I knew. I had to pull harder on my right hand. I wrapped a handkerchief around it, kept pulling, because I know I need to hit the shore right opposite Raleigh Island, or else if I get swept too far south, I'm gone. And I'm out in the open sea down there, the Dardanelles. And I pulled it, I rode, and used the lights of the island to keep my course. But pretty soon, I lost at the lights of the island, and I'm basically lost out here in the stormy, rainy night, pulling and stroking and singing myself to keep the rhythm, but I'm free. I pulled for a little while, and I got past the last of the boats, and I looked out, and I realized I'm past the last of the boats. I'm in the open sea. I'm fucking free. I almost lost an oar. I was so happy. I pulled them, and I started rowing, and I just rowed. I rode all night. After a while, I was exhausted, but again, I'm 28 years old. I'm in such good health. I was so motivated. I row 1,000 fucking miles, and I'm rowing all night and rowing and rowing and rowing. And I think I see at one point, these waves came up under me. I feel like I was in the back of a rising whale, but on the top of one wave, I could see far off in the distance these tiny red blinking lights, and I head towards them, exhausted but driven. I row 1,000 miles, and I'm rowing and getting goofy. I'm rowing, and suddenly the dinghy scrapes down in the sand, and a wave lifts us up and scrape down again, and I look up to this dim morning light at the wild, rugged coastline of Asia Minor, and I realized I made it. I jumped out. What I should have done is put a hole in the bottom and sunk the little dinghy boat. But I love this little dinghy. I hugged the bow of this little dinghy. And the sun was rising and the storm was passing. But far off in the distance, I could see Raleigh Island Prison. And I know the clock was ticking. So I started running north up the coastline of Asia Minor. And it truly was the finest morning of my life. Up against a wall, I found a puddle of fresh water, shoved my face in. I quenched my burning thirst. I washed the salt off. I waded out through these crashing waves on these big boulders. And up on the other side, I see up at the cliff top, 3 tall antennas with blinking red lights. It's my marker during the night. It's an army base. I scurried back around the other way. I climbed up this muddy, rocky incline and made my way around through the countryside, wooded hills around the army base. And then later, I come out of the woods stop me when you want, because I start doing this. If I don't have my wife next to me stepping on my foot saying, you're revving into the red line, so stop me when you want, because otherwise I'll keep rolling. I came out and I knew I needed to get back to Istanbul. I had a friend there who he'd become a Muslim. He spoke terrific Turkish. He owed me big time. I saved him from a really bad beating once in jail. So this guy, he owed me, and he was one of those people who that means something. Some people, they forget about you. They're gone. Most guys leave prison. They don't want to think about it. They don't write to you. They don't do anything. I knew if I got to the hotel where he was staying, he'd take care of me. So I made my way.
Can I ask a quick question? Yeah. Why wouldn't you go to the army base?
Because it was a Turkish army base.
Oh,
I don't want those guys.
I was thinking U.S. Army base.
No.
I was thinking, okay, he's home. He's free.
If it was, I might have. But then again, I'm not sure if I might have.
Oh, I would have.
Well, I mean, I'm afraid, supposedly.
Do you look like a prisoner still?
No, but I mean, I'm going to have to tell them what it is and explain something. They're going to know I'm an escaped convict from the prison. It took them a while. Again, this is 1975. Nobody's got internet. Their phones are like ding, 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 ding. It's not going to spread fast, but the word's out. First, they got to search the island. They got the morning bed check. They'll find out who's missing, and they'll have to look, and then they'll search the island. People would show up missing in the morning sometimes. These two guys one night were missing, and they found them on the other side of the island. They were trying to put a raft together. They had a couple of old truck tires that they found, and they were trying to slap boards on it to push a raft to escape. The guards came down, looked at them like, the fuck are you? To beat them with a stick, brought them back to the prison. So I was careful who I went up to. I'm on my own. I'm going to make it on my own. I'm ready to go. And I made my way back to Istanbul. And when I got there, this little guy who was running the hotel, he said, "Oh, Wolfie, oh, you missed him. He just left yesterday, Afghanistan." It's like, what? Fuck. That's the end of plan A. I wanted Wolfie to take care of me. I'd hide out for a week. We get some false papers and I slip out of the country. But he's gone. So now I'm really on my own and I'm wandering the streets. I wanted to fall on the ground and just curl up and cry. That's what I really wanted to do. But if crying helped, I'd have done it for 5 years. Nothing was helping. So I wandered the streets.
What were you wearing?
The clothes I had on, I had my jeans, I had a black jacket, I had an old turtleneck sweater on, the stuff that I escaped.
So you look like a normal person.
Yeah, they don't give you clothes in Turkish prison. Everybody wears their own clothes, which is why it's a whole
thank God. Like, what if you had an orange jumpsuit?
Exactly.
You'd have been screwed.
And then I would have to obviously change that. But I didn't. I had my own clothes. But when I wandered the street a little bit, I'm seeing, again, life and people and dogs and women and hair and hair. I had really blonde hair and a blonde mustache there. I said, hair. So I went to a drugstore. I bought some Siyah Renkboya, black hair dye. And I checked into some really funky little hotel down by the waterfront. Locked myself in this roachy little room, propped a chair against the door, checked the window for the jump down to the alley down below. And I got this stuff, this Siyah Renkboya, smelled like cat piss. And you rub it in this cotton and you rub it in your hair. And the hair looked bad. It was lank and black, but at least it was passable. The mustache, it looked so phony, like a big chunk of licorice on my upper lip. I went back out. I bought a razor, shaved off my mustache. Now I got this light black hair and this raw space kind of outlined in black completely. I was such a mess. I collapsed into bed, desperate for sleep, ready. I mean, waking with any creak. If I heard footsteps on the stairs, I was going out the back window because I don't know where they think I am, how they found me, who said something. The guy at the desk downstairs, if he was smart, he would probably contact somebody who would give him 100 lira if he reported me, but he didn't do that. So I spent the night in this little hotel. And the next morning I made my way down to the bus station. Again, I got maps. I know where I'm going. I got down to the bus station and I cut a bus for Edirne, which is a little border town on the Maratas River, a couple of 100 kilometers west of Istanbul. It's a river flows down from Bulgaria and separates Turkey from Greece. I know if I can get across that river, I get to Greece, the Greeks will never send me back to Turkey. Not after. I've spent almost 4 years in Turkish prison for 2 kilos of pot. If I killed someone, that's a whole different story. In fact, it's one reason why I didn't buy a gun. I had money. My dad sent me money in a photo album so I could help bribe for escaping. But if I got a gun and you got a gun, somebody's going to get shot. Either I'm going to get shot or you are. And now I've just killed you, so I wouldn't be free anywhere. I mean, I'd have to hide out in Uruguay or somewhere. So it wasn't, I couldn't get a gun. I just knew if I can get to Greece, the Greeks will take care of me. And I wandered the night. I made my way down past the last of the, again, from my map, there's a town of Edirne and then the smaller villages. And then you peter out into this kind of wild, open borderland between, and it's a border between Turkey and Greece. And again, they've been enemies for 1,000 years. They're very, very tight border. They got patrols, they got soldiers looking. But if I could get down to there, I can get across the river. Again, I'm a swimmer. I can swim as far as I need to. And I swam the river and it washed me downstream a ways. And I was trying to be quiet and like this. And after a while, it's fuck the quiet. Don't drown out here. And I'm kicking, I'm stroking. And my knee hits a rock and my feet find the bottom. And I drag myself up onto this riverbank. And I'm lying on my back, staring up at the stars. And this wild, giddy burst of joy bursts out of me. Like I was just giddy and ecstatic. But I was also exhausted and I was cold and I was tired, really tired. And I don't want to go up to the first guy because the river has been the border between the two countries. But the river has shifted over the years. So now the border is kind of shifted where the river has shifted. I didn't want to go up to the first guy. I happened to be a Turkish border guard. So I wandered through the night. And early morning, I came out of the woods to a little dirt road, and I know I shouldn't be on it, but it feels so good. Oh, I'm missing a whole bunch of stuff. I actually took my shoes and socks off on the Turkish side of the border because at one point I heard dogs. That freaked me out. Dogs? No, not fucking dogs. I tore off my stinky old sneakers and socks. They smell so bad. People are not real clean in jail. And I buried my sneakers and socks at the base of this tree and jumped up to the tree and shinny out on a branch and then dropped down and scurried away barefoot. That shows you how goofy I'm getting. Now I'm walking along barefoot. My feet are getting chewed up, but I don't care. I'm so close now. I didn't care. And oh God. So where am I? I escaped. I got into, oh yeah. So I get to,
the dirt feels good.
Yeah. Well, I'm wandering now in the woods. I come to a little road and I get out of the woods. I come to a little dirt road. Again, I shouldn't be on it, but it feels good on my feet. And I think I see a dark farmhouse and then dogs come barking, yapping. I rush away from the dogs. I say, I'm going to get back in the woods just past that little, like a kiosk, like an outhouse. I didn't even see it till I walked past it. And suddenly this bayonet comes down on my face. That's what you do. You put your hands in the air and they stick a bayonet in your face. And this guy yelled something. And I realized I don't understand him. And he yelled again, and I realized I don't understand him. I speak pretty good Turkish, which means he's speaking Greek, which means I made it. I'm in Greece. I collapsed on the ground with this big shit-eating grin on my dirty face. And the cop was blowing his whistle. Soldier actually was blowing his whistle. Other soldiers came out with flashlights around me. This captain guy sticks his pistol on the light, says, "Who are you? Who are you?" I said, "I'm an American. I just escaped from Turkey." They didn't know what to do with me. The Greeks, they kept me in this little cell in the woods for 12 days.
Now, why would they not give you back to Turkey? Were they against Turkey?
Well, no. Yeah, well, they're enemies for 1,000 years.
Okay.
They're mortal enemies, but they didn't know what to do with me.
I always have a joke and say, I wasn't very good at biology.
Yeah. Well, I was so happy to be here, and I knew that they would eventually send me back. They were not going to send me.
Yeah.
Again, if I kill somebody, it's different. I got a crime as hash. So it's like
what if you'd have been Turkish?
Oh, that's different.
Because they wouldn't be happy if they found a Turk over there.
No, they would not. They would not be happy. When I was in jail, a Greek guy parked his car out in front of a little chai shop somewhere. Somebody ran into his parked car while he was inside having his chai and got killed. That guy spent 6 months in jail while they worked it out, but he was Greek. Yeah, the Greeks aren't going to get special treatment from the Turks. So he spent 6 months in jail. He didn't do a thing. They crashed into his car. He spent 6 months.
Well, thank God Turkey was there and they weren't getting along, because what if you'd have been handed back, dude?
Well, that I didn't want. I was not going to get handed back. They're going to have to kill me.
Did you have that mindset?
Either free or dead. Yes. Life becomes easy at some points. Prison, it's weird about jail because everything you thought about and worried about in the outside world you were dealing with, it's down to a real tiny little thing. It's like you're in jail. You got to deal with your day-to-day in jail. And in my mind, and to escape. But otherwise, life becomes kind of simple and simplistic in prison. It's kind of boring too, because nothing happens. And everybody looks the same and they got the same fucking stories. And it's like, I hated it. And you usually don't want anything to happen because whatever it is usually a bad thing. Like the guards would come in the middle of the night and tore the place up. They'd open the lockers and they'd get everybody up against the wall and they'd rip all your stuff apart and they'd search the whole place and looking for contraband. They search people down looking for contraband. So you just have to make sure you don't get found with any contraband like hashish or I had a file and I had a rope as part of my escape plan. I was gathering things together. I had a map, a file, and a rope hidden in the bottom of one broken locker that was down the end. Because, I didn't want anybody to find that stuff, but I needed to have it if I'm going to make this escape actually work. That was the early part of the escaping. But now that the Greeks have put me in the cell in the woods, which they did, first morning, this Greek military intelligence guy came in to question me. And, he speaks great English and bushy eyebrows and these dark piercing eyes. He starts asking me all this stuff. It's like, wait, stop. I'm an American citizen. I know my rights. I demand to see the American consul. I know my rights. This guy just blows some smoke. Just, let me tell you what your rights are, kid. We find you coming out of a restricted military zone. You got no papers. You got no shoes and socks. You cover with mud. We could take you and throw you back across the river to the Turks. We could arrest you for entering this country illegal. We could take you out in the woods and shoot you and nobody would know. Or you can shut up, cooperate, and we'll send you home. And it's like, well,
yes, sir.
When you put it that way, what do you want to know? He asked me about the insignia on the soldiers' uniforms on Amrali Island, about the radar base that was on top of the place. He asked me about the tanks. I saw some tanks in the woods at one point that I had to scurry away from. And he showed me a map, a topographical map. You can see anthills on it. And I showed him, here's where I think I saw the tanks. Here's where I think I swam across the river. He said, you're a lucky man, William. I said, yeah, I know. He said, no, you don't know. We think all this land, mined. Mind. Oh my God. My mom used to say, God looks out for saints and fools. Well, I was one of the fools. I didn't step on any bombs. My old grandma, later on in the story, she used to go to bingo and tell everybody, yeah, my grandson Billy, he was up the river, Alcatraz. She's old, she's up the river, but he's out now. My mom is like, I don't know who this will be. You don't tell everybody, you just got busted. But in my case, they all knew it. I was in all the newspapers. My dad knew it. He went to work. He had to deal with the fact that his son wasn't a convict and was dealing with all this. But the escape was such a good thing in so many ways that people were happy that I got out. Not the Turks, of course, because it brought back to them, again, when I was busted, the word went out that an American had just gotten life sentence. Turkey's tourism, it stopped. People started canceling any trip they could take to Turkey. But, once I got there and once I was out, life was good. I got off the plane at Kennedy Airport. The press conference was there. People are asking me questions. I see my dad. I see my brother. My mom, she had to stay home. She didn't want to be.
Well, how'd you get from Greece to the States? They sent you home after you gave them some intel?
No, what they did is after they realized that what I was telling them was the truth, was that I escaped from Turkey and I don't have warrants and I didn't kill anybody. The American consul came out and took me to a little local place to get a passport. They took a picture, black hair. I still had that passport. Black hair, I dyed myself. And they drove me to the Thessaloniki airport. And there was a flight leaving for Amsterdam. And I said, if I'm going to be free anywhere in the world, it'll be Amsterdam. So I took a plane and I flew to Amsterdam and got off the plane and moved through customs. And the guy, long-haired Dutch customs guy, just stamped my passport, waved me through like all the other free men who boarded a bus into the city. I was overwhelmed. Literally, tears were pouring down. I'm laughing and tears are pouring down my face. And we go into the city and I get off and I'm wandering the cobblestone streets until I hear some funky Wilson Pickett, Mustang Sally, I hear, and I wander into this hotel bar, and this busty barmaid is she's pouring beers. Mustang Sally, I don't drink beer, but I ordered one just to watch her bend and pour. And then I had an order of peach pancakes and a strawberry ice cream soda. It was so unbelievably good. I tell the wide-eyed waitress, do it again. So I had 2 orders of peach pancakes, two strawberry ice cream sodas, and then I was out wandering along the little back dark canal streets of Amsterdam, and in these little picture windows lit up with neon, these beautiful half-naked women lounging on satin sheets and beckoning with their bodies. I hadn't been with a woman in 5 years, but I was so like I was at orgasmic levels of amazement just looking at them. I didn't even want to go in to just look at them. After a while, they realized he's just gawking. He's not really buying. They come to the window, close the drapes, and I'd move to the next window. I wandered the streets like a tuning fork, throbbing with the energy of everything around. When I was first arrested, I used to dream about being free. And I wake up so bummed because I'm still in jail. And after a while, that changed. Even if I dreamt I was free, it didn't catch me in the morning. Prison was my reality. The outside world was a dream. And now I'm out, and it really is like being in my dream come true. I wandered the streets. I ended up back in the hotel room and took a hot shower, the first shower I'd had in 5 years, which was unbelievably good. And I crashed to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night laughing out loud. Next day, I went down and had my black hair, which I dyed, had it cut short and dyed blonde again, like I used to have it. And then I wandered out into this wondrous Amsterdam morning, and I found myself at the Rijksmuseum, standing in front of this huge painting of Van Gogh painting of prisoners exercising. And there's like a circle of convicts marching around this stone prison courtyard. And in the foreground of the painting, looking at the viewer, is this blonde-haired prisoner. Van Gogh painted him. He had blonde hair. And I've just dyed my hair. 20 minutes ago, dyed it blonde again. And this blonde-haired prisoner is staring out at me from the fucking painting. It was like, oh, it was such a bizarre feeling. It's such a bizarre feeling. I kind of like flipped into the painting, and I was looking at myself out here, looking at the painting. And then I backed away, and I left him up there, and got back to my hotel room. And the next day, they put me on a flight to New York, where I was expecting and hoping for just a nice, quiet reentry into life. But when I got off the plane, actually, I was the last one, and they were letting other people off. Somebody showed up at the doorway of the plane and said, "Mr. Hayes, Mr. Hayes." It's like, yeah, I'm thinking the police. I'm going to have to. I don't want to. I hate fingerprints. I hate that. And I said, "You're the police, I assume?" He said, "Oh, no. I'm a Pan Am representative. Follow me, please." And he took me down some back stairs. I didn't even go through customs, which had me thinking, no, don't think like that anymore. I could have walked through a kilo of hash under my arms. And he led me to my dad. This is underneath wherever we were in the police station, in the airport. And there was my dad and my brother, and it was so good to see them. And Dad said, "Look, Will, there's a couple of reporters and stuff upstairs. So I want to tell you, if you don't want to do that, we'll slip out a side door. It's okay." I said, "I'm not slipping out any side doors. I'm free. I'll talk to anybody." I'm thinking there's a couple of reporters. There's 100 reporters screaming and yelling. The lights are on, and they got the microphones, and it was such a bizarre feeling to get back. I had to put my arm around my dad's shoulder just to give me some solid base here while I talked to 100 reporters about this. I've never stopped talking about this.
Because everybody had heard about this American that got caught in prison, and they knew you escaped.
Newsday, the local Long Island newspaper. I'm like, good local boy goes bad. They picked up the story when I was first arrested, and then they picked it up a lot when my sentence got changed to life. That became a really big deal. And then when I escaped, all they heard for like 12 days was Billy Hayes is not in the prison. They don't know where he is. They think he escaped. He might have drowned. Nobody knows where he is, because it was quiet. They kept me in the room in the woods. When they found out that, here I am, the press went nuts. They started, I wanted to get home to see my family, but my dad said, "Listen, again, these guys want to talk to you." I said, "Sure, I'll talk." But this is not what I wanted. Like, this is enough. Please let me go home. And so I drove home to see my mom, who was waiting at the door of our house, because she didn't want to come, and I didn't want her to see me in jail. I didn't want to see her. Sorry, I didn't want to see her and have her be in a prison with me. That was just too much. But I saw her in the doorway. But when we went from Kennedy Airport and got out to Babylon, where my family is, there were 20, 30 reporters out there. And as I pulled up, all the lights came on and people were screaming and yelling. My poor mom's standing in the doorway. It's like, guys, leave me alone. And I got to hug my mom, and my grandma was there. And it was, I was back.
Now you're home.
Now I'm home. That's
And
when I
you
knew
must
it.
have felt great.
So good.
So how there was no ramification from the U.S. government? Like they didn't care that you escaped.
I didn't have a crime in the United States. That's really weird. I didn't commit a crime in the U.S.
So
Escaping from Turkey is not a crime for the U.S. I didn't tell anybody that I'd smuggled hash my first 3 times. That was a whole nother issue that we had to deal with later. Because, actually my lawyer, the next day I saw my lawyer who'd been working on something, the International Legal Defense Council, to get me out. They were working on a way to do this. And he said, Jesus, we were working on this thing to get you out. Couldn't you have waited just a couple of weeks? I said, Michael, fuck you. Waited a couple of weeks. But
you're lucky as hell to get away.
I'm so lucky. I'm such a lucky guy. When I'm hot, I'm really hot. When I'm not, I'm really not. Well, suddenly after 5 years of not being hot, I got really hot again. And people were calling me. I went into the city. I got home like on Friday. By Monday, I was talking to literary agents in New York about writing a book. I'd still be procrastinating. I'm a writer. I wanted to write books, but I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to forget jail and not bring it up and write about it, but it forced me. Actually, therapeutically, it was the best thing I could have done, is to get back into it and start working. I gave 15 pages, my initial stuff, to Julian Bach, an agent that I'd met who I liked. He was like a avuncular, our Mr. Chips kind of guy. And on his wall in his office in Manhattan, he had a big picture of him running. I'm a runner, running the Central Park, around the loop in Central Park. So I liked this guy immediately. So he said, give me something. I gave him 15 pages and he finished it. And he said, well, Billy, now we know this is very good because we know we'll need a professional writer. I said, no, I went to Marquette. I went to journalism school. He said, your style, he termed it the hysterical subjective. He said, this will be good for you and your immediate Rolling Stone friends, but to put it in a book, to get it out, to make some money, which I really needed because I owe everybody. And again, what am I going to do for a job? Previous employment, last 5 years, convict. Doesn't get you a lot of work. All I could do is write. And I started writing this book and getting the words out. They would come out and they'd kind of like stick to the paper. And the more I wrote, the better I felt. I mean, it was very turbulent time for me, but I knew this is good. And it forced me to keep going. All the letters I wrote, the 1,000 letters I wrote home to people, there's the letters. Exactly. There's the picture. You see that picture? That's the picture I just told you about. That's the Van Gogh painting. Just after dyeing my hair blonde, look at the guy looking at you. He's a blonde-haired convict. That
crazy.
Flipped me out. I knew I'm going to use this somewhere. So when it got time to put this book together, I used that as the cover.
I can't wait to read some of these letters.
The letters are interesting because I've got a couple of like the original, the handwritten stuff, and I took some photos in there.
And it kind of gives you insight as to what goes through someone's mind while they're sitting and wasting away in a prison in Turkey.
If you want to know what it feels like to be in jail, you can read Midnight Express. In fact, I wish you would. Buy 10 copies, give them to all your friends. I can use the money. But if you want to know what it really feels like, letters is what it feels like. And again, you can see there's this kind of smart ass kid who's the first couple of letters, really, it hadn't sunk in yet. And as the letters, as time and wear and tear and the years and the tears, the letters really changed. When I had to write to my folks, God, that's so hard. So I could see the letters changed over time until the last letter was mailed off Imrali Island before I escaped. And I said to my dad, I may be out of here before you get this letter. And, I couldn't tell him too much. We'd write in code. Willie Mays is leading off third base. It was my dad's favorite baseball player. He said, Willie's leading off third base and he's, wants to steal home, all that kind of stuff like that, which the censors, they don't know what this is, all the Turkish censors. So we wrote in code when we had to. But writing the book settled me down. It let me answer the question. Everybody's asking me, well, what are you going to do now? It's like, I'm writing a book, because I didn't know what else to say.
Have you ever been back to Turkey?
Strangely enough. Again, stop me when because this will go on.
I would
forever.
not ever go back there, because what if you got some bullshit weird law where you're escaped and so now you're wanted forever?
There was an Interpol warrant issued for my arrest. Not when I escaped, not when my first book came out, but when the Turks saw the courtroom scene in the movie that Oliver Stone wrote. There's a courtroom scene there where Oliver's words, he's got me speaking to the court before I'm going to get sentenced to life, which happened. I was going free in 54 days. And then a week later, I was in the courtroom being sent. And I know they're going to sentence me to life in prison. That's what I already knew. You're going to go to trial. They're going to sentence you to life. The judge thankfully lowered it to 30 years. But again, 30 years life. For me, it was the same at that point. But I knew that if I could somehow get these books done and the book would move out, it would move beyond me, it would make me some money, it would let me pay back the money I owed my dad, it would give me somewhere to go, and it became sort of my entree back into life again, because I did interviews for the book, 1,000 interviews everywhere, and then I did 103 college lectures from like 1980 to 83, all around the US and Canada. The Midnight Express experience from Turkey to Hollywood and beyond. And I loved talking to college audiences, because that's who needed to hear my story. If my life is anything, it's a cautionary tale. And college kids, I know where they're at. They're invincible, just like I was back in the day. So when I talk to a college group, a lot of times I'd come out, stand in the front of them, and just spread my arms and not say anything for a while and say, this is what can happen to you if you're this stupid. And these kids would shake their heads, but it's the truth, because they didn't think they're going to get arrested. They never thought that they're going to get in trouble like this, but it can happen. If you're that dumb as I was, that can happen to you. So I love talking to college kids.
Well,
and then I became an actor.
I was going to say, so like when you got back, you're just free, meaning there's nobody out for you anymore. Like you're not a felon. Nobody's looking for you.
Well,
you're not on the lam.
In Turkey, I was. Again, the Turks issued an Interpol warrant for me.
But they're not coming to get you, are
No,
they?
but that warrant lasted for 20 years. And different countries react differently to Interpol warrants. There's certain countries I knew I couldn't go, like Germany, because they have a real tight prisoner exchange treaty with the Turks, because they got so many German workers back and forth. So the American consul, who became a friend in New York, he said, you cannot go to Germany. Absolutely. You can probably go to England. You can go to blah, 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 but you probably don't want to travel that much, which I didn't. I'd had enough foreign lands and traveling for a while. So I basically stayed in the States. I wrote my book. I got into acting, and acting became the therapy that I needed. A lot of people, when I got out, said, you should consider therapy. I said, no, I don't need therapy. I'm fine. I'm good. I wasn't fine. I had all this stuff hidden and pushed down that I didn't want to deal with, because I'm healthy and I'm free, but there's all this stuff bubbling in here, and I didn't want to deal with it. But writing the book helped me get some of it out, and then acting became. I met an acting teacher in LA, Eric Morris, who he looked right through me. Instantly, he knew all my bullshit. He saw past, I'm real glib and I smile, and he saw right through all that shit. And he made me, and he forced me as an actor to deal with the stuff. He said, the stuff that you're afraid to touch, that's your gold, G-O-L-D, as an actor. If you can't access that, you're wasting your time. You're wasting my time. If you don't want to really get real with yourself, like, fuck you, I'm telling you. He says, you're not giving us the real stuff. We'd scream and yell. I'd rush out of the door. I'd scream, I don't need your fucking class. He said, you need it like air. And I'd drive my car, and 2 blocks later, I'd have to pull over because tears are pouring down my face. So much stuff was rumbling up out of it. But out of that, he opened me up, and was right about that time that I met Wendy, my wife. And I'm the easiest person in the world to get along with, as long as I'm getting my own way. And she's the stubbornest human being I ever met. So between her and this acting teacher, they forced me up out of this not good place that I was in into a very good place. And I was able to use my acting for the next 10, 15, 20 years and do theater I did some movies. I directed a lot of theater too. I love theater itself rather than films.
Yeah, but the Midnight Express movie, you weren't in that.
No,
it was about you.
I sat in the hotel room with Oliver Stone for about a week, drinking Bloody Marys. He was snorting coke and smoking joints. He was crazy. I love the energy, but he was just nuts. And we finished up, and I talked to him nonstop. I talked for the first 2 days nonstop, and we taped everything.
Try to bring that as close as you can.
No.
I'd hate to where someone's like, yeah, I couldn't hear him the whole time.
Sorry. So
So
anyway,
you would think microphones would pick up anywhere.
But it was, where am I? Oliver Stone.
Yeah, so I know where I am.
So I was acting. So I was getting into acting at the time, and the acting was good for me, and it got me into doing theater. And let's see, what did I do? I was in Assassination. I was machine gunned to death by Charlie Bronson in that movie. I did a lot of weird, strange things and odd films.
Did you have a dream to be a movie star?
Of course. Well, not so much a movie star, just as a working actor. That's what I wanted. I mean, who am I? What am I doing? I wanted to be a working actor, making some money, which would be good, but just have the assurance that this is what I am and this is what I have to give. And that led to doing a lot of theater, and then an acting group in New York, a bunch of women. There's a play called The Cage, which was actually written in San Quentin by a guy who had 20-year sentence. He wrote his way out of prison, and then he traveled the world after he was released doing this one show called The Cage. They did a production in LA, and I came in to say, I'd like to, I can play a prisoner. So I got a part in it, and I got to work with him as a prisoner on a stage in LA. A year later, I was in New York, and this women's theater group that I know, they wanted to do a production of The Cage, but do it with women. So I said, and they wanted me to direct it. I said, fine, So we changed the he's to she's and the tits to dicks, and we did this play, and it was wonderful. I got to take the women actresses, about 5 or 6 of them, in character. None of these women had ever been in jail. I said, assemble like Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock, be here in costume and in character. And a big van pulls up. I'd spoken to people out at Rikers Island and said, I'm a theater director. I've got a production. It's set in jail. I've got these women in the cast. I would like to take them out and let them get a sense of what it's really like. And then we will come out and do a production for you guys. And they said, oh, that's good. So I got the women, this big van pulls up. We all crowd in the van, and they're all laughing and saying stuff and doing, until we get to that. I don't know if you know Rikers, but it's sort of a causeway that goes across from the land out to Rikers Island. And when we got on the causeway, the chatter stopped, and the women looked, and at Rikers Island, it looks like almost like a college campus, except it's got barbed wire around it and guards and stuff. And I got to go into jail with these women. First time I've been back in jail since I escaped. It was a strange feeling. When you walk through, they do the check, and you walk through some things. So we walk through. My stage manager, this goofy guy Tommy, he walked through, all the bells started ringing. It was like, whoa. When that happened, I found myself moving against the wall, putting my back against the wall, which is what you do in jail a lot. You don't want to leave yourself exposed because people stab you or something. So I'm up against the wall. Crazy Tommy, he said, oh, I don't know. They moved them through again. The bells went off again. He said, oh my God. So the guard right there pulled him aside. He's got these jean pocket things. He's got a big pocket here. He's got a screwdriver in his pocket. He's the stage head, the stage manager. He's, oh, I didn't even know that was in there. And the cops looking at like, oh man. So they let us all in to spend 2 hours there. The women got to meet other women who had been in prison and got a sense of what it was like. This one woman who was this black lady who I knew right away. She's running the cell block. And she said, so you're all out here, you're getting a look at how the animals live. Huh? I said, no, actually, I'm a director, and we're doing a play about prison. And she said, prison, what do you know about prison? I actually spent some time in jail. And she said, oh, you probably had a good time in jail. I thought, this is not working out well. On the TV, there's All My Children is playing. And I said, All My Children. I was on that show. They were like, what? I said, yes. Remember the wedding when the groom got shot by I was the saxophone player in the band, which is what I was. I used to play all these background things. That changed everything. Suddenly it's like, oh my God, you were on All My Children. They wanted to hear what we were on. The women started talking to the girl. It gave my actresses a sense of prison because they heard stuff like, the one woman said, I don't miss men. I can do without men anyway. What I miss is the smell of my baby. It's like, whoa, all the girls are like, I cry real easy. I'm real emotional. I'm like trying to keep it in the back because this wouldn't blow up. But the smell of my baby is what the one actress, she said, I never forgot that. That's the thing I always used when I was on stage and I needed to get to wherever the show was taking her. So I just think about that woman saying that, and it just would take me right there. So acting was such a good thing for me to be doing.
Now, if you could like sit face to face with this, younger you, and like,
yeah,
he's heading to prison, and he wouldn't listen to, but what would you say to that guy?
I'd say, think about your family, which I didn't do. I mean, I did, but I knew I'm never going to get caught. I'm never going to get busted. I don't have to deal with that until suddenly I had to deal with it. I mean, the second morning I was in jail, the American consul guy came and they talked to me, and then they gave me a pencil and a piece of yellow paper and left me alone in this little locked room to write a letter home to my folks. And that's when I was forced to face what I'd done. I mean, I wanted to ignore it. I didn't want them to know. I was going to get away. I was going to get free, whatever. I didn't want them to have to deal with it. And now suddenly I've got to write a letter to them. That's the first letter in Letters Midnight Express. That's the first letter I wrote home. It killed me.
So in the quietest moments of your life, when there's no audience, no interviews, and no need for storytelling, what memory from your time in prison still refuses to let go of you? The biggest one, because clearly you still remember.
Oh, I remember everything.
But what's the one thing that like you just like wish like you could let go of?
So the low point was when my friend Norman was killed, when he died. That was, for me, that was the bottom, the real bottom. And when I pulled myself off of that and said, I'm okay, I'll do my time. I'll put the switch off, and prison changed. So I had like almost a year and a half or so being in jail, but it was different. It was, I can do the time. I can take care. Again, I do yoga every day. So I would do my yoga. I would stay calm. I'd become a kind of a fixture in there. People knew who I was. I didn't get bothered. You don't bother me. I don't bother you. We're friends in jail. Okay. That's how you work things. Friends, you don't mess with me. I will mess with you. So I was established and regular, and I felt pretty good until suddenly, like now I'm looking at the rest of my life in prison. But I took, while I was in the good period before things changed, I used to have, I did a lot of psychedelics back in the day. I love psychedelics. I think everybody should trip at least once in their life so they realize how limited our view of everything is, in truth. When you drop acid, it expands you out to a degree that's like, wow. Then you come back and at least you have a little perspective on what I thought things are and I am and how I'm supposed to be is very different than what things really are. And you find that. Well, I dropped some acid in jail one day, and I was sitting on my bunk. And I think it was a Saturday, because you don't have much activity on the weekend. So that was a good time to do that. And I was sitting on my bunk, cross-legged, meditating, when I felt this immense glowing ball of energy open up from out of my chest. My heart was pulsing out this light of love that overwhelmed me. I mean, tears were pouring down my face because I realized this is my reason for being, simply to love. And I didn't know that. It took me 4 or 5 years in prison to come to that realization. But when I realized what it meant, it was like, oh, okay, that's what I need to do in my life. I can be a fireman, a police, whatever else I do. I need to spread that energy. I keep doing this because that's what my hand is, where it feels like. If I can just touch with that energy of love, whoever I'm with, as far as out it can go, just keep it for myself. It'll spread out. That's what I should be doing. And that was probably the biggest truth I learned in prison.
Do you think because of that whole experience, I mean, like, as you still remember it vividly, it's obviously contributed massively
Right.
to the career paths and the
Right.
opportunities and the rest of your life. So after all these years, do you kind of feel like maybe you didn't escape?
Well, if I didn't come home and write the book.
No. I mean, like, even though you did.
Oh, well, in the beginning, I used to sometimes have dreams and wake up thinking I'm still in jail. But after a while, that went away. It faded away. And I realized that the things I've learned in prison it took me 5 years, but it's worth it because that energy, I'm as far as it can go, as far as it can spread. That's the most important thing I learned in jail. So all 5 years of prison was worth it just to learn that. The rest of it comes and goes.
Especially when dropping bombs the whole time, folks. But like I was too captivated. Wanted to get it direct. I want to get into these books, folks. If you guys want the real stuff, The Midnight Express, Letters from a Turkish Prison.
Yeah.
Billy Hayes, Midnight Express, Train Keeps Rolling.
That's the last book. I finished it during the pandemic, which was good because it kept me busy most morning. It didn't drive my wife crazy because, you don't go out, you don't talk to people. Obviously, I like to talk to people. So I would be on her until I realized I need to let her alone for a while. She can't hear me constantly. And I wrote that book, and that was so good for me to be writing that in jail. And it also brought a lot of things together. Well, I go in circles. Then I go back to Turkey. Yes, I went back to Turkey. There was an Interpol warrant out for my arrest, but at one point, I got a phone call from people from the Turkish National Police, which is a separate group of police in Turkey, and they're just sort of elevated to a degree. And these 4 guys contacted me. They contacted a Turk in LA who called me out of the blue. I said, "How did you get my number?" Anybody can get my numbers. I'm not that secret. And he said, "Can we meet? I need to talk to you." I said, "Fine." There's a Starbucks up the street. So 2 hours later, he meets. He's got his wife, very pretty lady. She's got her head covered and such. And she said hello, didn't shake my hand, said hello, and then sat there and just watched me the whole time. I could feel like sensing me. And I talked to this guy, spoke terrific English. He told me 4 cops in Turkey had heard me speaking, and they heard me say that, I loved Istanbul. I made friends with Turks, and that the movie is not show Turkey the way it really is, because they got a really bad rap. It's Oliver Stone. I mean,
and by the way, you guys can look this movie up. This movie was like Academy Award winning, big time.
4 Academy Award nominations. I think we won 3.
And were you walking around red carpets and doing the whole
Well, not so much that. When all that was still happening, I'm still always a little concerned about covering my back because the Turks hated me. I mean, I had a whole country that hated me. The speech in the court, when I was standing in front of the court, what I said to them was, I've been in your prison almost 4 years now. If you're going to sentence me to a prison, I can't agree with you. All I can do is forgive you, which is really all I could say, because that's all I had to say. My life was about to go down the toilet. There's black, and all I could do was forgive them, because that's what I had to give to just keep it together in this darkest hour. What Oliver Stone wrote in the movie was, "You're a nation of pigs. I fuck you all. I fuck your sons, and I fuck your daughters." That's what the Turks heard. That's what the world heard. Billy Hayes saying. At that point, American Consul in New York said, "Billy, I just heard." I said, "What?" He said, "We just heard from the Turkish government. They have issued an Interpol warrant for your arrest." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, it means you're going to have to be careful not to travel to any countries that will honor an Interpol warrant." And he mentioned Germany and some other places. So it's like, I wasn't traveling that much anyway. I've had my fill of far-off foreign lands. My wife likes to travel. Now she goes by herself a lot. I like to stay home. I like to do I like to play poker, smoke my weed, and write my stuff. But
you live in Las Vegas now.
Now, yeah, less 10 years. We've been in LA for like 30. I'm from New York. She's from Oklahoma.
So you're smoking weed every day?
Every day. I smoke weed every day.
Do you think it helps your sanity?
I think so. And I think it's good for me. My body likes it. I'm 77. I got aches. I got pains. I lived a pretty active life, and I've had these things. Weed calms my body down, calms my mind down too, which is what I still need more than anything. If I don't have my wife around to just calm the fuck down, I have to work on it myself, because you can't stay revved up all the time. It's not good for you. Make mistakes.
How close to the real thing was the movie?
Emotionally, the film was pretty accurate. They made big changes in the actual story. One of the biggest was the courtroom scene. And then they came to the escape, which, again, you heard, I escaped off an island in a rowboat in a storm. I spent 3 days running through Turkey, diving, all of which would have cost a lot of money to film. Filming at sea, at night, and running through Turkey. They needed to get the film done. They spent I think less than $3 million. That's like chump change now to do the whole goddamn movie. They shot it on Malta. And
Did you get a piece?
I did. I got a piece. I got five net points, which everyone in Hollywood I spoke to said, you'll never see a penny of net. And I said, well, fine. So I know I got some cash and then I got net points. My net points, when the film broke, it went worldwide. It was such a huge thing. And I think they made like almost $100 million on a $2 million film. So everybody did well. And I had 5 net points, which turned out to actually, I'm still getting a check once a year. It's not like it used to be, but the film is still playing.
What if everyone goes from the Bomb Squad goes and rents it? Like, can you see it on Netflix, Paramount Plus? Where do you got to go?
It's been on virtually all of those things, on and off.
It's got to be findable. This is the freaking 2025.
It's easy to find Midnight Express.
I remember watching it, but that was a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. It was 1978. The film came out, and it broke, and then it just spread. I literally traveled the world doing these interviews, doing these lectures. Everywhere that they had the film, they brought me, and
it's almost so crazy because, like, you smuggled drugs. You just did it in Turkey.
Right.
Lucky.
Right.
Then because you did it, you're now famous
That's
for
why
it.
So many people
getting paid for it,
so
and
many
no
people
consequences.
Don't like Billy Hayes because of it. I've got so many people. He was
Why?
a drug smuggler. That fucker. He never should have got out. They should have locked him. That's fine. Have your own opinion. I don't care. But I don't have any problems with cannabis. I mean, personally, it should have been legal forever. So many people have had their lives destroyed by this plant. It's a plant growing out of the ground.
Yeah. In fact, by the way, you've got this product, Midnight Express Premium.
Yeah.
Pre-rolls.
Pharmaceutica. FARM Pharmaceutica is the company I'm now working with, and we're going to be distributing this box the way it's done, plus their other products, because they do a lot of products, and I'm going to be the spokesman to sell cannabis products and some of their other pharmaceuticals to the senior groups.
Find your freedom.
Yes, exactly. I'm 77 now. I can talk to these people of my age and my ilk, and some of them who still are worried about cannabis or your drugs. It's a drug. We don't want to use it. It's like, guys, it's a drug. It's a plant growing from the ground. It's good for you. They found that cannabis now has all kinds of healing benefits. And for the most part, people aren't being arrested. From the day I got out, what I always said was, stop putting our kids in prison for pot. The insanity of that. And I was careful when I first got out because I couldn't say that I'd smuggled 3 times prior. My lawyer, when I first got home, my lawyer said, well, what are you going to do now? I said, well, I'm writing a book. I want to write about, my first 3 trips. And he said, wait. You're going to write in public in your book that you made 3 hash smuggling trips successful before you got busted on the 4th trip? I said, yeah, I want them to know the truth. He said, okay, I have one more question. Are you out of your fucking mind? You can't say that. They'll arrest you. I said, they can't do anything. They don't have any proof. He said, the U.S. government doesn't need any proof. You're an escaped convict, a drug smuggler. The American council the Turkish government is going to request your extradition. And the American government is going to decide yes or no. And you want to tell the government, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. 3 times I smuggled. I only got caught on the 4th trip. He said, you cannot say anything about your first 3 smuggling trips, which made it difficult in writing my first book, Midnight Express, because I had to pick up where the 4th trip happened. I couldn't write about the first 3 trips, which made it difficult to write about. And I had to tap dance a little bit doing interviews because people said, well, wait a second. What if it's like, guys, give me a break. I cannot say that I smuggled hash. Then it got to the point where I spoke to several. I had an American consulate who was a very good friend who after a while, he said, Billy, the U.S. government doesn't care that you made 3 successful smuggling trips. Now it's past. They don't want to deal with it. Nobody wants to bring it up. The Turkish government doesn't care anymore. They don't ever want to hear the name Billy Hayes again. The Turkish government, these 4 guys contacted me and they said, we've heard you speaking about Turkey. There was a big international conference in Istanbul, second global conference on peace and democratic principle, whatever, a big conference, 1,000 representatives from 100 countries around the world were coming to Istanbul for this big conference. These 4 cops wanted me to come and say what I just said to you, what I said to them is that, I liked Turkey, blah, blah, blah. So I heard this and it was like, whoa, wait a second. And more I thought about it, I'd wanted to balance things between me and Turkey. I wanted them to realize it wasn't Billy Hayes that said, fuck your sons and daughters. I said, I forgive you. It's such a difference. It makes such a difference. When the Turks heard that and it became clear to them, these were Oliver Stone's words. These were not my words. It changed everything. People who hated me, they're like, well, I guess he didn't say that. He's still a drug smuggler. Yeah, but I didn't say fuck your sons and daughters to the world, which Oliver did. So these cops said, will you come and speak before this big conference and say what you said about
Turkey?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd have said, hell no, this is a trap.
Well, I thought the same thing. And all my New York friends, of course, are like, wait, fuck it. You can't do that. It's like, what I realize is they want the same thing I want, which is to balance this between us and to not have this Billy Hayes hates Turkey thing. And this was a chance for me to do it. And the last thing they want is to bring me into a trap and then suddenly spring it and put me in jail. They didn't need that publicity. That's the worst thing that could happen to them. So they said, we'll take care of you. You come. They flew me in quietly. I landed about midnight one night. They took me to the hotel quietly. They didn't let people know that Billy Hayes was back. So they had to sneak me into the conference. And then I got to speak at one point. They took me in the conference and I went back to my hotel room. This is like cloak and dagger. And they said, Billy, right now we need to go the big conference room. And they said, there's a press conference right down, newspapers, everybody. It's like, oh, okay. So I walked in, big room, all microphones, Turkish people asking me questions. I got to say kind of what I'm saying to you now, which is that it's not true. It's not fair that Turkey took such a bad beat on this. I didn't say this stuff about the country. In fact, I loved Istanbul. I had a Turkish girlfriend. That's how much I loved Istanbul. So I wanted to balance things. So I got a chance to do that. And when I spoke to the Turkish press, there was one woman up front who she kept asking me this. Well, why this? Well, how about this? And I answered her questions. And after a while, she realized, wow, huh? Okay. I knew when I kind of won her over, this was it. Every newspaper in Turkey had pictures of me in front of the conference saying that, this isn't true. The Turkey wasn't this. And these are Oliver Stone's words. And Billy Hayes said, I forgive you, which I did. I've been reading Nelson Mandela, who, after 26 years in prison, he said, if you leave prison and you don't leave the anger and the bitterness behind, you're still in prison. And that's just so true.
That was kind of what my question was kind of like. Do you feel like you're still there, but you've let it go?
No, I had to let it go. When I got the bad dreams at first, but they passed away and everything moved out. Again, most guys coming out of prison, they don't tell the world they've been in jail. It's not a good thing for your future. I didn't have that option. The whole world knew I'd been in jail from the moment I stepped off the plane, and it forced me to talk about it.
Yeah, but it was happily ever after that.
Eventually, it was happily ever after. It wasn't right
Sounds
away.
happily ever
Well,
after. Like if someone said, hey, what'd you think? Well, I mean, it was interesting, but now that I talked to him direct instead of just watching the movie, there was a little difference. But man, as soon as he got home,
it
was happily ever after.
Pretty much so.
So you got lucky. You're a lucky individual.
Such a lucky guy.
I got 3 more questions.
Yeah.
Number 1, why Midnight Express?
It's the term for use in prison. You escape it's a term for escape. You catch the Midnight Express, the Midnight Flyer, the Midnight Ghost.
Because the boats, Midnight Expresses, the big ass, kick ass, like $1 million speedboat.
I've heard about them.
They're called Midnight Express.
There's a Midnight Express. There was also a Midnight Express tour that went from London. They put you on a bus. You smoked pot on the bus. They drove you to Istanbul. You smoked in Amsterdam. You smoked. That was the Midnight Express tour. There was a group in England called the Midnight Express.
Well, now I know I'm keeping you too long.
No.
So
I
now
talk to you all day,
dude. Now you go to Turkey to get hair and teeth and cosmetic surgery. Apparently, Turkey's the place to get hair.
No, cosmetic surgery. My vanity stops right at the edge of pain. I hate pain. I would never do plastic surgery. But I didn't go back since then because
I wouldn't either. What if they change their mind?
Yeah, there's somebody. You know what? There's somebody in Turkey. Actually, quite a few people. I had one kid who said, my father's business collapsed because of you.
Ooh.
He was in the tourist travel industry and such. He said, the tourism dropped 95%, which I knew the number, 95%. He said, my family really suffered because of you and your movie. I said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that for that to happen. And I didn't say, fuck Turkey and the Turk. I said, I forgive you guys. Again, the difference between forgive you, fuck your sons and daughters, big difference. The whole world heard, fuck your sons and daughters. They didn't hear me say, just the people in court heard me say, I forgive you.
Well, that's a keynote.
Yeah.
Second question. These premium pre-roll Midnight Express
CBD joints. Yeah.
Yeah. This is CBG.
CBG, CBD. They're both, they don't have.
It's got THC though.
Well, the these are all the same plant. It grows from the ground. When they work it and deal it, and they can somehow work it that the THC factor is less than, I think it's 0.03, which is legally
0.03.
Now it's legal everywhere. But when I was doing this, if there's less than 0.03,
it's just 0.3.
0.3. All right. That's the limit.
But you smoke weed every day is what I'm saying.
That is weed. Hemp
but is
weed.
This what you smoke, or you smoke weed?
I don't smoke this because this doesn't have weed. It doesn't have the THC in it. I like to get high.
Yeah, so you smoke weed.
I get high and I write. That's what I do.
So the second question is
play poker. I play a lot of poker. Get high and I go play poker.
This right here is a well done, killer looking.
Yeah,
and the box, packaging,
nice packaging,
pretty badass. You're on there. It's Midnight Express. But my thought was, it would be so much cooler, this thing, if I rolled it out and that paper is your letters. It wouldn't cost much more either.
Yeah. The letter, let's leave the letters where they are. That's the joy.
But I mean, just letters, like no one would, I mean, they're going to smoke it. They don't have to read it, but it'd be cool because I saw some of these handwritten letters in here. Like maybe if they use that print on the paper.
I see. Maybe.
Well, if you guys see this later, then you know it came from OBL.
We're getting to the point now where, again, I'm talking to Pharmaceutica and the people who are doing this, and we're just at the stage now we're about to get back into getting that out, and I'm going to be doing promotional stuff to try and bring it about. But I'm ready to get back out there again. I kind of like went into a cocoon. I got big and I got crazy, and then there was this stuff, and then I needed to just get away from. That's why I don't do Twitter. That's why I didn't go on Facebook. I said, I don't want to be out there.
You got an Instagram.
I got an Instagram that I've never used. I put 4 pictures on it because people said, what do you want? So it's
so if people want to engage, they'd go to Facebook.
Go to Facebook.
You're on Facebook.
Billy Hayes. Yeah.
So and that's you talking.
I interact with anybody who comes on Facebook. Yeah.
Billy Hayes, folks, just Billy Hayes on Facebook. And then my last question, I always ask, what can the Bomb Squad do for you? That's the people that'll be listening to this, not only, when it drops, but like into the future. Like tell whoever listens to this and listen to the whole story, how can they, if they like to, how can they help Billy Hayes?
Well, again, I'm a writer. It's what I've always wanted to do. It's what I started out doing when I was a kid. Jack London was my hero. I used to read all of Call of the Wild and Burning Daylight, and he got a job as a merchant seaman somewhere traveling the world, and he'd write 1,000 words every morning. I got my merchant seaman's card too. I wanted that. I got it on the Great Lakes, the ferries going across. And I met a girl whose dad was a captain of one of the boats. So she got me my merchant seaman's card. I just like that idea. And I always wanted to be a writer like Jack London. So I wrote the books. I'd like people to buy my books because it's been a long time now. Midnight Express is 50 years ago. The first book came out. I've got Midnight Express. I've got Midnight Returned, which is kind of like the next 10 years. It's like what I've been talking to you about, the weirdness after jail. Prison was strange. Coming home was really weird. It was good. It was wonderful. I loved it. And it was so strange in so many ways. The next book was the book of letters, because that's sort of real. And this last book, the epilogue, it's just kind of wrapping it all up. It includes my trip back to Turkey. I met Wendy at the Cannes Film Festival, and when Midnight Express played there, Wendy and I went back. They did a documentary about me, the true story of Billy Hayes in Turkey. This woman followed me around for like 10 years in everything that I did when I was doing theater. And it just went on and on and on. And then suddenly we were going back. We got picked up when she finished it. It got into the Cannes Film Festival. So I went back for my documentary playing there with my wife, who I met there after the first movie, like 37 years later. We got to go back to Cannes, which was amazing. And in that, the documentary had filmed all of my time in Istanbul when I went back, when we were talking to the Turks, because these people were with their cameras filming me. So I not only got to speak in Turkey, I got to go, remember I told you I went to the madhouse where I was trying to escape at one point, and I knew that if I get to the madhouse and get certified as being crazy, my friend Norman would come, I'd climb the wall, he'd be outside, I'd escape. He was stabbed to death in his hotel room. So that didn't happen. And that's the point where I said, I fucked up everybody's life enough. I'm just going to do my time. So I stopped and I turned the escape switch off. But when I got a chance to go back to Istanbul with the documentary playing and talk to the Turks, that was amazing for me. It was, in some ways, it kind of wrapped a lot of weird lines in my life up and put them in one straight line. I'm back. This is the truth of what happened. This is what I did. Take it for what it's worth. And it's not the answer to your question. I know. So
well, I got
lost.
Well, no, that answers it. I mean, really, it's what can we do for you? You see, buy the books, man. Go enjoy my art.
And we're going to have this product is coming out. Midnight Express, Find Your Freedom. That's going to be a brand that I hope is all of the pot smokers who might be listening to this, watch for my brand, because it's going to be some really good stuff.
Last question.
Yeah.
You said in the green room, let's go do it. I've done a million of these. Ask me something that no one's ever asked before. I have a question.
Yeah.
Norman. I don't know how to ask it perfectly, but Norman was murdered or killed.
Yeah.
More than likely for humping old boy's girl.
Yeah. The army base.
What would you do if you found out someone was humping your girl? Like, you think that was justified?
No, I mean, murder is never justified. I guess killing someone can be justified if it's your life or their life or blah, blah, blah.
How about understandable? In other words, like, you say in your head, because I mean, obviously you and Norman were close. That guy's a great guy for doing that for you. And, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
One of the mistakes people make sometimes is
the mistake was on me.
I always tell people, don't bang people's wives, dude. You could end up dead.
I agree with that for many reasons. But Norman thought he was a poet. He was the kind of guy, women just loved him. We go with him and just
Casanova.
Yeah, exactly. He was like an Irish Casanova. He had black hair and his blazing green eyes, and he would spout poetry to strange women he's never seen before and charm them in. Everybody liked to have Norman around because he'd go find us a couple of girls and bring them all back. He was that kind of guy. And he also, he saw himself as a musketeer, and this was an adventure for him. This was the Count of Monte Cristo. And he was not as streetwise as he thought he was.
So what would you say to Norman if he hadn't been killed?
Thanks for coming. I mean, if he had come, I think I could have gotten over the wall and I think we could have escaped. But, if I'm climbing a wall and he's got a car and I'm jumping in it, people are going to be after you. People with guns are going to be chasing you. Who knows what would happen?
There could be people, following you.
Exactly.
Could have been killed.
It could have been.
Did the Turkish people have guns at the prison, was it? Yeah, they did.
Oh yeah, I could have bought a gun in jail. If you got money, you could buy anything in jail. But again, if I've got a gun and in the course of an escape, and you're a guard and you got a gun, you're going to shoot me. I'm going to shoot you. Somebody's going to die. And if it's you, I'm not free anywhere. My crime was hash. I didn't do anything else. But if I killed a guard, again, I'd have to live in Uruguay or somewhere because I'd have a crime against me, and the U.S. government wouldn't be able to help me, and somebody would have been after me. So I couldn't do that.
It was surprising U.S. government would help you with the hash thing. Well, and then they turned around and whacked you because they said, war on crime, get more tough. Were they talking about you or just anyone?
Anyone.
So you just got caught up.
Yeah. Well,
See, it's
again,
like you're lucky and then you're unlucky.
I
Then you're
said when
lucky,
I'm
then
hot,
you're
I'm
unlucky.
really hot. When I'm not, I'm really not. I'm getting lucky now to have Find Your Freedom hash coming into my life again is good because I make money in clumps and bunches. Between the last clump and the next bunch, I never know how long it is. Eventually, it'll come in. I want something a little more steady. My wife would like something a little more steady here, and she deserves a little bit more peace. She's lived with me for 40 years. It's been hard living with me, I know, for a lot of reasons, but she's the best thing that ever happened to me. She makes my heart sing.
Well,
Literally.
44 years, man. Nowadays, that's a lifetime.
I know.
For marriages.
Yeah.
So congrats on that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not happy you went to jail, but I'm happy whatever happened. So I got to enjoy the movie.
Well,
I think everyone
thank you,
should
sir.
go watch the movie. Okay, go watch the movie and get the books.
I'm into branding. I see you've got a big thing. You guys are really into branding the product. I've been branding Billy Hayes Midnight Express from the moment I stepped off the plane 40, 50 years ago. So I'm into branding this product right now. Let's see if it works.
Dude, who you said your wife designed this?
Yeah.
She did a good job.
She's very good.
Yeah,
at this.
I'm not a big weed guy anymore.
Yeah.
And I've done acid.
Yeah.
I've done it all. Not all, but
Right.
like what I thought was all. I experimented like I thought everybody did, but
Of
now I'm
course.
talking to people like, no, I've never done drugs in my life. My wife, she's never smoked a joint. She's never done anything. I thought everybody
Right.
did.
Well, that's one of the things that we're talking about. This is there's a whole range of, especially seniors, people my age or around that, who still drugs bad, drugs bad. It's like, no, cannabis. It's just a plant that grows from the
Yeah, I
ground,
thought everybody did
and
it.
it's now medicinal.
And now it's legal.
You don't have to do opioids. You don't have to take all that bad shit. You can smoke a joint, and
Hey, is hash legal?
yes, hash is the same. Hash and marijuana are the same. It's
I
just
thought- 'cause
different
someone told me-
intensity.
Well, it's made the same way, you mean? Because like I remember someone asked me one time, do you want to smoke some hash? And I'm like, well, what's hash? And it was this sticky little chunk
Yes.
of what looked like paste.
Yeah.
And then they put it in the bowl and it smelled different and
Yeah,
it tasted and it was weird. And I said, dude, I don't want none of that shit.
It's more powerful than the regular weed just because it's compact, but it's still the same drug.
What about edibles?
I don't do edibles myself. I mean, I've tried them because I try everything,
Yeah.
but I don't like edibles because it takes a while before they come on, and then you're not sure how long it's going to last. And it's like, I smoke now like I smoked in jail. One pipe, the weed, I mean, actual flower. I put a little bit in a pipe. I smoke it. And just like I'm in prison, when you smoke a little hit, when you finish, no smoke should come out. You take it in, you blow it down the toilet or out a window somewhere because you don't want the smell around. I smoke like that now. I'm the worst. I had a guy who was my drug dealer. We also played poker. He was my drug dealer before it became legal. He hated me. He said, 2 months ago, you're still smoking this little bag of weed. I said, I only smoke a little bit. I don't need much. I get high real easy.
Do you think it's contributed to the health you're in?
I think it has because I smoke and I do yoga sometimes.
You think it's yoga or the weed?
Oh, well, the yoga is the key thing. I mean, again, I've done yoga 50 years every day, every day. It's not a question of, well, I'm going to take a day off. I can't. I need to do yoga.
If you had a 14-year-old kid and he said, Dad, can I smoke weed? What would your answer be?
I'd say probably you should wait because there's some idea about how cannabis affects younger people rather than older people, but nothing's proven. It depends upon who you're talking to.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, it is crazy.
Because
And
I always want to
it's
say
dangerous.
don't, but then what if that, better than thou attitude is literally costing somebody a cure? Because dude, there is cure from like epilepsy. And
Yeah.
I've seen I forget what the thing is, but they were doing this.
Yes.
And then they smoked weed and then
it
they stopped.
Yes.
And then after a while they were doing this and this was like the disease. They were
That's what I'm saying.
like, dude, if I was shaking, man, and then you're going to hold, like, I don't want to stop that. I always say, figure it out for yourself. My best advice is probably shouldn't do drugs at all.
I tell people, I say, do what you like and know what you're doing. Knowing what you're doing means you take responsibility for your actions because you're responsible for what you do and how it affects other people.
Period.
I didn't do that. I mean, again, I put my mom in jail. Wow. That's really irresponsible of me. And it ate me up for 5 years. It still does. I mean, you see, I can barely talk about it 50 years later, the pain I put my family through. And I have such a good family. I mean, incredibly good family. And I put them through that. My sister and
let it go, Billy.
It's gone. It's gone.
Let
it's
it
gone.
go.
I'm constantly letting
They
it go.
forgive you.
Indeed. I know they do. They always do. Yeah.
That's why you need weed, because deep down you still feel that freaking guilt, I think.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I don't blame you, dude.
No. It's true.
Especially because it sounds like you loved your family a lot.
I love my family. Again, I'm so lucky because I had such a good family. I've been doing, I wrote a one-man show. I was traveling the world for about 7 years doing this one-man show. It's right in the Midnight Express with Billy Hayes. We'll use all the promos and the links that we can possibly get in it. And I did the last 3 nights of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, the big theater marketplace, as it were, in 2013. I did the last 3 nights. I have not stopped doing this show since. People from all over, because it's a marketplace, they come and they see you, and then they say, well, we'd like to bring you. I got picked up everywhere. I started doing the show, and I never stopped. I was going to be doing the show here. I told you, I put up one night to get some local people in, and then Vegas shut down because of COVID. So I never got the show up, but I'm looking now to put it up again.
It's time to do it. It's time to bring it back.
Yes, it is.
Folks, if you guys know anybody in Las Vegas, any kind of freaking producers, let them know Billy Hayes is looking to bring back the Midnight Express.
It's an easy show. It's me on a stool on stage. I don't need anything else. I don't need background. I mean, I can take as much as we want, like better lights. We got a little bit of music come in.
Why don't you go figure out who can redo the movie?
No, well, we're working on that.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot of people they've never heard of that shit. I know people I'm like, Gilligan's Island. They're like, Gilligan's Island. What's that? I'm like, dude, how in the hell do you not know what Gilligan's Island is?
We are trying to do the sequel. We wanted to do an 8-part, like a mini series with the first 3 smuggling trips. I mean, that's so good. In between trips, I was in Pamplona. I was running with the bulls. I was riding motorcycles around Europe, and then I would go back. And I come. I had it's such a good story. And then there's the real escape, which the movie, it's like an afterthought. When people hear, you escaped off an island and you ran through Turkey, they said, why didn't they put that in the movie? It's like, it wasn't me. Oliver Stone wrote it. Alan Park. The budget was a key factor. Columbia Pictures, they did not want to do this movie. This was
how much did you make from that whole thing?
I made, like, initially, I think I got $125,000 up front. This is 1976, which, again,
it was a chunk of change.
It's forever. When I got out of jail, I thought, if I can just get $40,000, I'll be good for life. That's my perspective. I've been in jail for 5 years, and it was, mid 70s. But that carried me through. That let me become an actor. That gave me the time to not have to work a 9-to-5 job, which I've never really had. I was a lifeguard before I got to be a smuggler. So, lifeguard, I'm a little too old to lifeguard. My profile is too high to be a smuggler. So I became an actor.
Well, it would give you the option or the opportunity to get that courtroom scene corrected. I
would like to do that. I tell about, like, just telling you, I mentioned that in the show because, when I finish my show, I stay on stage, exhausted, exhilarated, but I just stay on stage and say, who's the brave soul who wants to ask the first question? And I just listen. I take questions until they click the lights because people got to go home, or my producers in the back say, get me out of here. But I'll just answer the questions, and it's very helpful. And the audience, I hear what they say. They're interested in this stuff. I mean, sure. People,
it's like a comeback story.
Yeah.
You staged a daredevil escape. When it says like daredevil, it's obviously that's a good thing. But dude, if I were there, I would have done the same thing. If anybody's judging, well, he escaped prison. Dude, listen, you tell me life in prison, I'm gonna escape until my life's over.
Right. Until I'm finished one way or the other.
There's no life in prison for me either.
No. Even when you deal with it and you make the best of it, it's like my life is ticking away. My teeth, literally, my biggest problem was my dental. My teeth were falling out of my head. They don't have really good dentists when you're in jail. I had an older Armenian dentist who would come in once a week, and the Armenians and the Turks hate each other. So this old dentist would come in. He'd work on the guards for free. And he's giving the guard when he would come in. I had a toothache one day. It was so bad. It was throbbing and throbbing. I couldn't deal with it. And the this is Tuesday and the guy's not coming till the next Monday. So I didn't know what to do. I've never had my head banging like this. And they gave me a little piece of opium. They said, put that on your tongue and let it. I put it there. It sort of numbed it. And I got as sick as I've ever been in my life. Oh, I hate opium. I'm not good with any drugs except cannabis. Opium made me so sick. When the dentist finally came, I got over there and I told him, and he was ticking around. He's got the cigarette hanging out of his mouth and he's leaning over. The electricity in Istanbul at the time, it was on, it was off. He had a drill, which he hooked up to put you in the chair, and he hooks this drill up and it's got the thing on it and it's got a little foot pedal. Yeah. He's not on electric. He's foot. Yeah. I'm watching. It's like, oh, and he went in and he hit one of my teeth. It was like, I come up out of the chair. And then he went in and he yanked this tooth out. And I went back to the cell block and I was dying back here. And after about an hour, the same fucking. It's like I ran back. He was getting the stuff. He was leaving. I bribed the guards. I had to get back. I said, this tooth, it's still here. And he looked and he hit the next one. He said, oh, yeah. He said, the last one that we took out, it was bad anyway. Don't worry about it. It took both of them. I hope he's correct because I lost both of my teeth that day. So my biggest problem physically was teeth because I don't know how I got onto that. God, Brad, you got me revved up here. If Wendy was around, she'd say, calm down. Usually it's a foot stepping on my feet, like at the table where I'm telling a story. I didn't want to talk about this stuff for a while. And my friends said, we get you to a party somewhere. They get you all stoned and they get you telling these fucking stories anyway. Why don't you write a theater piece about it? I said, no, I don't want to write it. People are sick of hearing all this Billy Hayes Midnight Express bullshit. They don't want to hear this anymore. Turns out they do, because again, everybody has been there, not in the Turkish prison, but they've been in their own deep, dark hole where they don't know if they're going to make it out or not. And the fact that I got out of it kind of lets everybody else think, well, maybe if he got out, maybe I can get out. And I love that. I get that response in the Q&A afterwards too.
That's freaking awesome. People can see the show now?
Oh, I hope. I mean, we're going to be putting it up here soon, I would hope.
Okay, so where do people find you? At Real Billy Hayes on Instagram. Billy Hayes is where he's at on Facebook. The other one's just a page his team has. Website, anything?
BillyHayes.com. Great website. It's got all this stuff. Again, I can barely open my emails, but my producer put it up, and it's got all the shows. It's got my books. It's got all of the rah-rah stuff. And where else? And we're going to be putting the show up somewhere here soon, I hope. Which,
thanks to social media, all they got to do is follow you from now on.
Yeah, go to I saw it on your wall. The real Brad Lea. I've got the real Billy Hayes at gmail.com. That's my email. The real Billy Hayes.
The real Billy Hayes at gmail.com. Dude, you might get your email blown up, but folks,
I'd love it.
He gave me more time than I asked for. He's a good dude. Just because he escaped a Turkish prison doesn't make him a bad dude.
Thank you, sir.
You'd have done the same thing.
If you could, and I'd be cheering you every step of the way.
Yeah, I think everybody understands that. But I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Folks, go support the dude. Read his books. Pick his brain or poke him to come out with the one-man show. But I say a remake of Midnight Express where they get the damn court scene correct, and now Turkey loves you.
That's what I would like.
Folks.
Inshallah, as they say in Turkey. Inshallah.
And for me, as always, just keep it real.
Keep it real. Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. Oh, wow.
All right, folks, thank you for watching live. You got a sneak peek. This doesn't drop for a couple of weeks, but you got to see it. Don't tell nobody. Let's go. Let's end the stream.